A deaf woman walks into a blind date with Philadelphia's most dangerous crime boss, a setup meant to humiliate them both. But when their eyes meet across the candlelit table, he doesn't fumble or panic. Instead, Kael Virelli raises his hands and signs her name with perfect fluency, his fingers moving like he's been waiting his whole life to speak her language. The room goes silent. The joke dies. And something far more dangerous than power begins to unfold. If you want to see where this impossible night leads, stay until the end and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Takishite. The rain came down hard that Friday night, turning Philadelphia's streets into black mirrors that reflected neon and headlights in fractured streaks. Inside Marcello's, the kind of Italian restaurant where reservations required connections and cash arrived in briefcases, the dinner crowd hummed with the comfortable noise of privilege and secrets. Elara Quinn sat in this corner booth by the window, watching raindrops race each other down the glass. She'd chosen this seat deliberately, back to the wall, clear view of the entrance, close enough to the exit that she could leave without making a scene if this whole thing went sideways. Her friend Mira had set up this date with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer, insisting that Elara needed to get back out there after 2 years of teaching, Netflix, and exactly 0 romantic complications. The problem was that Mira had a twisted sense of humor and a habit of thinking she was funnier than she actually was. Elara checked her phone. 8:15. He was late. Whoever he was. Mira had been deliberately vague about the details, which should have been a red flag the size of a billboard, but Elara had agreed anyway, mostly because saying no required more energy than showing up, sitting through an awkward hour, and going home to her cat. She adjusted the napkin in her lap and took a sip of water, watching the bartender shake a cocktail with the kind of aggressive confidence that suggested he'd done this 10,000 times and would do it 10,000 more. The restaurant's ambient noise, the clatter of silverware, the murmur of conversation, the soft jazz bleeding from hidden speakers, was completely lost on her. She'd been deaf since she was 7, the result of meningitis that had ravaged through her system like wildfire, leaving silence in its wake. Most people, when they found out, did one of 2 things. They either started shouting at her like volume could bridge the gap, or they got awkward and weird, suddenly self-conscious about every word. Elara had learned to spot both types within 30 seconds of meeting them. The door opened. A gust of wet wind pushed into the restaurant, carrying the smell of rain and exhaust. Elara didn't notice the temperature drop or the sudden shift in the room's energy, but she noticed the bartender's face go still. She noticed the waitress freeze mid-step, tray balanced on one hand. She noticed the couple at the next table lean closer together, their conversation dying mid-sentence. Then she saw him. Kael Virelli walked through Marcello's like he owned it, not with arrogance, but with the kind of quiet authority that didn't need announcement. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Elara's monthly rent. His dark hair was slicked back, still wet from the rain, and his face carried the kind of hard angles that looked carved rather than born. But it was his eyes that caught her, pale gray, sharp as broken glass, scanning the room with the methodical precision of someone who'd learned early that survival required awareness. He didn't smile, didn't nod to anyone, just moved through the space like a knife through water, parting the crowd without touching it. And he was walking straight toward her. Elara's stomach dropped. No, absolutely not. This had to be a mistake. Mira wouldn't. She couldn't. But even as the denial formed, she saw the recognition flicker across his face. A slight narrowing of those cold eyes, a fractional pause in his stride that confirmed what she already knew. This was her date. Mira had set her up with Kael Virelli. Elara had never met the man, but she knew the name. Everyone in Philadelphia knew the name. He was the kind of person newspapers wrote about in careful language, the kind prosecutors couldn't touch despite decades of trying. He ran things. Exactly what things depended on who you asked and how much they valued their kneecaps. But the consensus was clear. Kael Virelli was not someone you wanted to be near. And he was standing at her table. He looked down at her. She looked up at him. For 3 seconds, neither of them moved. Then something strange happened. Kael Virelli's expression shifted, not into warmth exactly, but into something less predatory. He glanced toward the bar where two men in expensive suits were watching with barely concealed grins, like kids waiting for a firecracker to go off. Alara followed his gaze, saw the smirks, and understood instantly. This was a setup, a joke, someone's idea of entertainment. Pair the crime boss with the deaf girl and watch the awkwardness unfold. Anger flared hot in her chest, not at Kyle, but at whoever had orchestrated this, at Mira for being complicit, at the casual cruelty of people who thought disability was punchline material. She started to stand, ready to walk out and leave this whole mess behind. But Kyle raised one hand, palm out, a gesture that said, "Wait." Then he did something Alara hadn't expected. He sat down across from her, unbuttoned his jacket with deliberate care, and met her eyes with an intensity that pinned her in place. His hands came up, fingers poised, and he signed with perfect, fluid clarity. "My name is Kyle. I'm sorry about this." Alara's breath caught. She stared at him, her brain struggling to process what she'd just seen. His signing wasn't hesitant or clumsy. It was fluent, natural, the kind of proficiency that came from years of use, not a weekend crash course. She glanced past him toward the bar. The smirks had vanished. The two men were leaning forward now, confusion replacing their amusement. Alara looked back at Kyle. His expression hadn't changed, still guarded, still unreadable, but his hands moved again. "If you want to leave, I understand. But if you're willing to stay, I promise this won't be what they thought it would be." She should have left. Every rational part of her brain screamed that staying at a table with a man like Kyle Varelli was a monumentally stupid decision, but something in the way he signed, the precision, the respect embedded in every gesture, made her pause. She signed back, "Why do you know ASL?" For the first time, something flickered behind those cold eyes. Not warmth, but something rawer, older. "I had someone who needed it," he signed, "a long time ago." The restaurant's noise pressed against them, invisible to Alara, irrelevant to Kyle. Around them, the dinner crowd began to move again, conversations resuming in careful whispers. But at their table, silence reigned. Not the empty kind, the full kind. Alara made a decision. She sat back down, folded her hands on the table, and signed. "Okay, let's see where this goes." Kale's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. He gestured to the waiter, who approached with visible nervousness, and pointed to the wine list. The waiter nodded rapidly and disappeared. Then Kyle turned back to Alara, and his hands began to move. "Tell me something," he signed. "Do people usually underestimate you?" She almost laughed. "Every single day." "Good," he signed. "Me too." The wine arrived, a bottle of something Italian and probably expensive. The waiter poured with shaking hands, set the bottle down, and fled. Kyle ignored his glass. So did Alara. "What do you do?" he asked. "I teach," she signed. "Deaf children, grades 3 through 5. Something shifted in his expression. Interest, maybe, or recognition. "That's important work." "It is," she agreed. "What do you do?" The corner of his mouth lifted. "I solve problems." "What kind of problems?" "The kind most people don't want to think about." "Fair enough." Alara leaned back, studying him. He didn't fidget, didn't look away, just held her gaze with the same intensity he'd had since sitting down, like she was a puzzle he intended to solve. "Why did you agree to this?" she asked. "The date." "I didn't," he signed. "My associate thought it would be funny." "He's an idiot." "My friend thought the same thing," Alara signed. "She's also an idiot. Seems like we both need better people in our lives." "Seems like." They sat in silence for a moment, the kind that didn't need filling. Then Kyle's hands moved again, slower this time. "Can I ask you something?" "You just did," she signed, "but go ahead. Do you ever get tired of people treating you like you're fragile?" The question hit harder than she expected. Alara took a breath, considering her answer. "Every day?" she finally signed. "But I've learned that people's assumptions say more about them than about me." Kyle nodded slowly. "I've learned the same thing, different reasons, same conclusion." "What reasons?" "People see what they want to see," he signed. "They look at me and see something dangerous, something to fear. And maybe they're right, but it's not the whole story. What's the rest of the story?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached for his wine glass, took a sip, and set it down with careful precision. When his hands came back up, they moved with something close to hesitation, a crack in the armor. I had a sister, he signed. Younger than me by 3 years, she was born deaf. My parents didn't know what to do with her. They loved her, but they didn't understand her. So I learned. I was 8 years old and I learned sign language so she wouldn't be alone. Alara's chest tightened. Where is she now? Gone, he signed, 15 years ago. Complications from surgery that should have been routine. I'm sorry. Don't be, he signed, but there was no harshness in it. She taught me more about strength in 10 years than anyone else has in a lifetime. Alara didn't offer platitudes. She understood loss well enough to know they were useless. Instead, she signed, What was her name? Mira. Alara blinked. My friend, the one who set this up, her name is Mira. Kael's expression darkened. That's either a strange coincidence or someone's idea of a sick joke. Knowing my friend, probably both. The waiter returned, hovering nervously at a distance until Kael waved him over. They ordered, Alara choosing the first thing her eyes landed on, Kael ordering something in rapid Italian that made the waiter's eyebrows climb toward his hairline. When they were alone again, Kael's hands moved. After she died, I stopped signing. Couldn't do it. Every gesture reminded me of her, and I wasn't strong enough to handle that. So I buried her, moved forward. What changed? Nothing, he signed. Until tonight. I walked in here, saw you, and my hands remembered before my brain could stop them. Alara's throat felt tight. She reached for her water glass, took a long sip, and tried to organize the chaos in her head. This wasn't how tonight was supposed to go. This wasn't how anything was supposed to go. I don't know what this is, she signed honestly. I came here expecting disaster. Instead, I'm sitting across from someone who actually understands. Is that a good thing? I don't know yet. Kael almost smiled. Fair. Their food arrived in waves, plates of pasta and roasted vegetables, and something involving truffle oil that smelled so good even Alara's limited sense of taste couldn't ignore it. They ate slowly, hands moving between bites, the conversation flowing in a rhythm that felt oddly natural. Do you like teaching? Kael asked. I love it, Alara signed. Those kids, they're told every day that they're broken, that they're less than. I get to show them that's bullshit. How? By giving them tools, language, community, by showing them that silence is an emptiness. It's just a different kind of full. Kael set down his fork. You're good at this. At what? Talking without talking, she smiled. You're not so bad yourself. I'm rusty. Could have fooled me. The restaurant around them had settled into its late evening rhythm, tables emptying, voices dropping, the lighting dimming to something more intimate. Alara found herself leaning forward, elbows on the table, watching Kael's hands with a focus she usually reserved for her most challenging students. Can I ask you something personal? She signed. You can ask. I might not answer. The people you work for or with or whatever, do they know you sign? No, he signed immediately. And I'd prefer to keep it that way. Why? Because the moment they know, it becomes a tool, a vulnerability, something they can use. Against you? Against anyone. Alara processed that. So what happens when we leave here? What do you mean? Do you go back to being whoever they think you are? Kael's hands stilled. He looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable crossing his face. Then he signed, slow and deliberate. I don't know. I've been that person for so long, I'm not sure there's anything else left. I don't believe that. Why not? Because people who have nothing left don't look the way you do when you sign. They don't remember their sister's name with that much pain still attached. He didn't respond, just sat there, hands resting on the table, jaw tight. Alara pushed. What are you afraid of? That you're right, he signed finally, that there is something else, and that reaching for it will cost me everything I've built. Would that be so terrible? Depends on what replaces it. The waiter returned with dessert menus. Neither of them looked. Kael waved him away with a gesture that was somehow both polite and final. When they were alone again, Alara signed, I have a proposal. I'm listening. Come see where I work. Meet the kids. See what it looks like when people build something instead of just protecting what they have. Kael's expression shifted. Surprise, maybe, or suspicion. Why? Because I think you need to remember what your sister showed you. and because I'm curious to see if the man sitting across from me right now is real or just a performance. And if it's a performance, then we both wasted a nice dinner. And if it's not, then maybe you'll figure out what comes next. Kael sat back, studying her with those pale, calculating eyes. Alara held his gaze, refusing to flinch or soften. She'd spent too many years being underestimated to back down now. Finally, he signed, "When?" "Monday, 3 o'clock. I'll text you the address." "How do you know I'll come?" "I don't," she signed, "but I think you will anyway." Something close to respect flickered across his face. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a business card, and slid it across the table. It was blank except for a phone number embossed in black. "Text me," he signed. "I'll be there." They left Marcello's separately, Alara first, walking out into the rain with her coat pulled tight and her mind spinning. Kyle stayed behind, settling the bill and ignoring the stares from his associates at the bar. When he finally stood to leave, he paused at their table, looked both men in the eye, and signed something they couldn't understand. "Touch her, and I'll bury you myself." They didn't understand the words, but they understood the tone. Alara made it 3 blocks before she had to stop, leaning against a brick wall as the adrenaline drained out of her system. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from something else entirely, something that felt dangerously close to hope. She pulled out her phone and texted Mira, "We need to talk. Tomorrow. My place. Bring wine and an explanation." The response came immediately. "OMG, how was it?" Alara didn't answer. Instead, she opened her contacts, added Kael's number, and typed out a single message. "Monday, 3 p.m. Riverside Elementary. Don't be late." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The rain had softened to a drizzle by the time she reached her apartment, a third-floor walk-up in a neighborhood that was trying hard to be gentrified and failing spectacularly. Her cat, an orange tabby named Dickens, greeted her at the door with his usual indifference. Alara fed him, changed into sweats, and collapsed onto her couch. The silence of her apartment pressed against her, familiar, comfortable, safe. But for the first time in years, it felt incomplete, like she'd left something behind at that restaurant, something she hadn't even known she was missing. Her phone buzzed. She picked it up, expecting Mira's inevitable barrage of follow-up questions. Instead, it was a text from Kael's number. "I'll be there." 3 words. Nothing more. Alara stared at the screen until it went dark, then set the phone down and closed her eyes. She had no idea what she'd just started, but she knew, with the kind of certainty that lived in her bones, that nothing was going to be the same. Outside, Philadelphia hummed with its usual chaos. Sirens and traffic, and the endless pulse of a city that never quite slept. Inside, Alara sat in silence, her mind replaying the way Kael's hands had moved, the precision of each sign, the weight of everything left unspoken. Monday felt impossibly far away and terrifyingly close. She wondered if he felt the same. Monday arrived with the kind of gray cold that made Philadelphia feel like it was holding its breath. Kael stood across the street from Riverside Elementary at 2:45, hands shoved deep in his coat pockets, watching kids stream out through the front doors in clusters of noise and color. He'd been there for 20 minutes already, studying the building's layout, the exits, the security cameras mounted above the entrance. Old habits. He shouldn't have come. Had told himself a dozen times over the weekend that this was a mistake, that getting involved with someone like Alara Quinn was the kind of distraction that got people killed in his line of work. But Sunday night had found him lying awake at 3 in the morning, staring at his ceiling, his hands remembering signs he hadn't made in 15 years. So here he was. A black SUV rolled past, slowing as it reached his position. The rear window came down 6 inches. Marco Tesaro's face appeared in the gap, all sharp cheekbones and sharper suspicion. "Boss," Marco said, "the hell you doing in this neighborhood?" Kael didn't turn his head. "Taking a walk. In front of an elementary school. Fresh air's good for you. You should try it." Marco's jaw worked like he was chewing on a response he knew better than to voice. "Dante wants to meet, says it's important. Tell Dante I'll call him when I'm done." "Done with what?" Now Kael did turn, fixing Marco with the kind of look that had made grown men reconsider their life choices. "You got a hearing problem I should know about?" Marco's face went carefully blank. "No, boss." "Then fuck off." The window rolled up. The SUV pulled away. Kale watched it disappear around the corner, cataloging the tension in Marco's shoulders, the way his hands had gripped the doorframe just a little too tight. People were asking questions. That was fine. Let them ask. He'd been answering questions with silence and violence for 2 decades. He could do it for another week. At 2:58, he crossed the street and pushed through the elementary school's front doors. The inside smelled like floor wax and construction paper and something vaguely institutional that he couldn't quite place. A bulletin board near the entrance displayed student artwork, crayon drawings of families and houses and dogs with legs in the wrong places. A hand-painted banner stretched across the hallway. Every voice matters. Can I help you? The woman behind the front desk was maybe 60, gray hair pulled back in a bun that looked like it could survive a hurricane. Her eyes swept over Kyle with the kind of assessment that came from 3 decades of dealing with every variety of parent, administrator, and problem that walked through those doors. Kyle reached for his phone, typed quickly, and held up the screen. Here to see Alara Quinn, 3 o'clock appointment. The woman's expression shifted, not quite softening, but losing some of its edge. She nodded, picked up the desk phone, and spoke into it briefly. Then she gestured down the hallway. Room 7B. Second floor, end of the hall. Stairs are to your right. Kyle nodded his thanks and headed for the stairs, hyper-aware of the cameras tracking his movement, the locked classrooms he passed, the emergency exit signs glowing red at regular intervals. The building was old but well-maintained, the kind of place that ran on tight budgets and tighter dedication. He found room 7B at the end of a hallway decorated with more student work. Finger paintings, spelling tests with gold stars, photos of field trips to museums and parks. The door was open. Inside, Alara stood at the front of the classroom, her back to him, writing something on the whiteboard in precise, careful letters. Kale stopped in the doorway and waited. Alara must have sensed the change in light or felt the shift in air pressure because she turned. When she saw him, something crossed her face. Surprise, maybe, or relief. She set down her marker and signed, "You came." "I said I would," he signed back. "People say a lot of things. I'm not most people." She almost smiled. "No, you're really not." The classroom was empty of students, but full of their presence. Desks arranged in a semicircle facing the front, walls covered in visual learning aids, a carpet in the reading corner worn soft from years of use. Everything was labeled in both English and sign language, the photos demonstrating each gesture clear and precise. Alara moved to the nearest desk, leaned against it, and signed. "They'll be here in 5 minutes. There are 8 of them, ages 8 to 10. They're going to stare at you because you're new and kind of intimidating looking." "Kind of?" "Okay, very. But they're also fearless, so don't be surprised if they ask you questions you're not ready to answer." "Like what?" "Like why your suit probably costs more than their parents make in a month, or why you look like you've never smiled in your entire life." Kale's mouth twitched despite himself. "I smile." "When?" "When it's strategically necessary." "That's not smiling. That's tactical manipulation. There's a difference?" This time she did smile, and the expression transformed her face from merely pretty to something that hit him square in the chest. Before he could process that reaction, the sound of footsteps, multiple sets, moving fast, echoed from the hallway. The kids arrived like a storm system, 8 of them, ranging from small to smaller, backpacks bouncing, faces bright with the kind of energy that only existed in people under 4 feet tall. They poured into the classroom, signing to each other in rapid-fire bursts that Kyle struggled to follow, and then every single one of them stopped dead when they saw him. The silence that followed was absolute. Alara stepped forward, her hands moving in clear, deliberate signs. "Everyone, this is my friend Kyle. He's visiting today. Please make him feel welcome." A girl in the front row, maybe 9, with dark curls and suspicious eyes, signed, "Why is he here?" "Because I invited him," Alara signed back. "Why?" "Because sometimes it's good to meet new people." The girl looked Kyle up and down with an expression that suggested she'd seen through about 17 layers of bullshit and wasn't impressed by any of them. "He looks mean." Kyle knelt down, bringing himself to her eye level. "I get that a lot," he signed. "What's your name?" The girl's eyes widened. She glanced at Alara, then back at Kyle. "You sign?" I do. How come? I had a sister. She was deaf. I learned so we could talk. Where is she now? The question hit like a punch. Kael kept his expression neutral, his hands steady. She died. A long time ago. The girl processed this with the brutal honesty of someone too young to know that some truths required softening. That sucks. Yeah, Kael signed. It does. My name's Sophia. Nice to meet you, Sophia. She nodded, apparently satisfied, and moved past him to her desk. The other kids followed her lead, the ice broken, their curiosity overriding their caution. They settled into their seats with the kind of chaotic efficiency that suggested this was a well-established routine. Alara moved to the front of the room, and Kael retreated to a chair in the back corner, feeling suddenly out of place in a way he hadn't experienced in years. But he stayed, watched, paid attention. The next hour unfolded like nothing Kael had ever witnessed. Alara taught with the kind of intensity and focus that he recognized from his own work. The absolute commitment to the task at hand, the refusal to accept anything less than full effort. But where his world dealt in fear and control, hers dealt in patience and possibility. She taught them vocabulary, grammar, storytelling techniques. She corrected mistakes without judgment, praised improvements without condescension, and somehow managed to keep 8 kids engaged and focused for 50 straight minutes. Kael found himself leaning forward, watching her hands move, remembering the way his sisters had moved with the same confidence and grace. When Alara called for a break, the kids scattered, some to the reading corner, some to the windows. Sophia straight to Kael. You're really good at signing, she signed, planting herself in front of his chair like a tiny interrogator. I'm rusty, he signed back. You don't look rusty. Looks can be deceiving. Ms. Quinn says that a lot. Miss Quinn is smart. Sophia glanced over her shoulder at Alara, who was helping another student with something, then back at Kael. Do you like her? Kael blinked. What? Do you like Miss Quinn? Like her? That's a complicated question. No, it's not. It's yes or no. How old are you? 9. Don't change the subject. Kael almost laughed. Almost? I like her, he signed carefully. She seems like a good person. She is, Sophia signed with absolute certainty. She's the best teacher I've ever had. She doesn't treat us like we're broken. You're not broken. I know, but a lot of people don't. The simplicity of the statement cut deeper than it should have. Kael looked at this 9-year-old girl with her fierce eyes and her unflinching honesty and saw something of his sister in her. The same refusal to be diminished, the same quiet strength. What do you want to be when you grow up? He signed. A lawyer, Sophia signed immediately, so I can yell at people who are wrong and get paid for it. This time Kael did laugh, a short, surprise sound that made several kids turn to look. Sophia grinned like she'd won something. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of activity. The kids worked on a group project, something involving poster board and markers and a truly impressive amount of glitter. Kael stayed in his corner, observing, occasionally fielding questions from the bolder students. One boy asked if he was a secret agent. Another asked if his suit was bulletproof. Sophia asked if he'd ever punched anyone, and when Kael hesitated, nodded like he'd confirmed something she'd already suspected. At 4:30, parents started arriving. They filtered in one by one, signing to their children, offering Kael polite but curious glances. He recognized the assessment in their eyes. The same calculation everyone made when they saw him. Dangerous. Other. Not one of us. But none of them said anything, just collected their kids and left. By 4:45, the classroom was empty except for Kael and Alara. She finished erasing the whiteboard, turned, and signed, So what? What did you think? Kael stood, moved to the window, and looked out at the street below. The SUV was back, parked half a block down. Marco, probably, or one of Dante's other watchdogs. Keeping tabs, making sure the boss didn't do anything stupid. Too late for that. Your students are terrifying, he signed. Alara moved to stand beside him. In a good way? In the best way. That girl Sophia, she's going to run the world someday. I know. I tell her that at least once a week. Does she believe you? Not yet, but she will. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the street. Then Alara signed, Can I ask you something? You're going to anyway. Why did you really come today? Kyle turned to face her. Because I needed to see if I was remembering it right. Remembering what? What it felt like, he signed slowly, to be part of something that wasn't about power or control or fear. To be around people who built things instead of breaking them. And? You were right. I'd forgotten. Ilara's expression softened. It's not too late to remember, isn't it? Not if you don't want it to be. Before Kyle could respond, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and felt his jaw tighten. 3 missed calls from Dante. 4 texts from Marco. 1 from Vincent, his second in command, that just read, "We need to talk. Now. Problem?" Ilara signed, "Always." He signed back, "I have to go. Will you come back?" The question hung between them, heavy with implications neither of them was ready to voice. Kyle looked at her, really looked, taking in the hope and caution and something else he didn't have a name for. "Yes," he finally signed. "If you'll have me. Wednesday, same time. I'll be here." He left without another word, taking the stairs 2 at a time, pushing through the front doors into the gray afternoon. The SUV's engine started before he reached the curb. The rear door opened. Kyle climbed in. Marco sat across from him, face carefully neutral. Vincent was in the front passenger seat, turned halfway around, his expression harder to read. "Where have you been?" Vincent asked. "Out? For 3 hours? I wasn't aware I needed to clear my schedule with you." Vincent's eyes narrowed. "Dante's pissed. Says you've been dodging his calls all week." "Dante's always pissed about something." "This is different. He thinks you're distracted." "Dante thinks a lot of things. Most of them are stupid." Marco shifted uncomfortably. Vincent's hand tightened on the seat back. "Boss, with all due respect—" "You want to finish that sentence?" Kyle interrupted, his voice dropping into the register that made people reconsider their choices. "You better be damn sure it ends somewhere you can live with." Vincent held his gaze for 3 seconds, then looked away. "Meeting's at 7, warehouse on Dock Street. Everyone's going to be there." "Fine." "You going to tell us what this is about?" "No." The rest of the ride passed in silence. They dropped Kyle at his apartment, a penthouse in Center City with floor-to-ceiling windows and the kind of sterile luxury that came from having money but no interest in spending it on anything that mattered. He showered, changed into a different suit, and spent 20 minutes staring at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. His hands came up almost unconsciously, signing words to his reflection. "What the hell are you doing?" No answer. Just his own face staring back, looking older and harder than he remembered. At 6:30, his phone rang. Private number. "Yeah. It's me." Dante's voice, rough from 4 decades of cigarettes and shouting. "We need to talk. So talk. Not on the phone. Get to the warehouse early, just you." "Why?" "Because I'm asking nicely, and you know I don't do that often." The line went dead. Kyle stared at the phone for a long moment, then pocketed it and headed for the door. The warehouse on Dock Street was one of 3 properties Kyle owned through a shell corporation nobody could trace back to him. It sat at the edge of the industrial waterfront, surrounded by similar structures in various states of decay. Perfect for meetings that required privacy and plausible deniability. He arrived at 6:45. The main floor was empty, just shadows and the smell of old concrete. A single light burned in the back office. Dante's silhouette filled the doorway. "You're early," Dante said. "You asked me to be." Dante stepped aside, gesturing Kyle into the office. It was small, cramped, dominated by a metal desk and 2 chairs that had seen better decades. Dante closed the door and leaned against it, arms crossed. "Want to tell me what's going on?" Dante asked. "Not particularly." "Kyle, we've known each other 20 years. I've never seen you like this." "Like what?" "Distracted, absent, soft." The word landed like an accusation. Kyle felt something cold settle in his chest. "You think I'm soft?" "I think you're spending your afternoons in elementary schools instead of handling business. I think you're dodging calls from people who expect answers. I think something's changed, and I need to know what it is before it becomes a problem." "It's not a problem." "Then what is it?" Kale met Dante's eyes. The older man had been his mentor once, Back when Kael was 23 and angry and looking for a way to channel all that rage into something productive. Dante had taught him the rules, the hierarchy, the cost of weakness. It's personal, Kael said finally. There's no such thing as personal in our world. You know that. Maybe I'm tired of that world. The words were out before Kael could stop them. Dante's expression went very still. Say that again. You heard me. Kael, listen to yourself. You run half this city. You've got power, money, respect, and you're thinking about walking away because of what? A woman? Some feel-good bullshit about redemption? It's not about redemption. Then what? Kael struggled to find words that wouldn't sound insane. It's about remembering who I was before all this, before the violence and the fear and the constant goddamn paranoia. I had a sister, Dante. You knew her. She died, and I buried that part of myself because it was easier than feeling it. But now you've met someone who makes you feel things, and suddenly you want to burn down everything you've built? I'm not burning down anything. I'm just exploring options. Dante laughed, but there was no humor in it. Options? Jesus Christ, you sound like a civilian. Maybe that's not the worst thing. It is in this business. Dante pushed off the door, moved closer. You want to know what happens to people like us when we go soft? They get eaten alive. By rivals. By law enforcement. By their own people who smell weakness and decide it's time for new management. I can handle myself. Can you? Because from where I'm standing, you're one bad decision away from getting yourself killed. Or worse, getting all of us killed. That's not going to happen. You don't know that? Dante's voice rose, genuine anger bleeding through his usual control. You think this life comes with an off switch? You think you can just walk away and everything will be fine? There are people in this organization who would gut you the second they thought you were vulnerable. And this, he gestured vaguely, encompassing Kael's recent absences. This is vulnerability. Kael's hands curled into fists. I'm not vulnerable. Then prove it, tonight. When everyone gets here, you show them the man they know, the one who doesn't flinch, the one who makes the hard calls. You show them that, and maybe we can forget this conversation ever happened. And if I don't? Dante's expression went flat. Then we've got a problem. Footsteps echoed from the main warehouse floor. Voices, growing louder. The others were arriving. Think about what I said, Dante murmured, then opened the door and walked out. Kael stood alone in the office, his reflection staring back from the dark window. Outside, he could hear his people gathering. Marco, Vincent, Tommy Rizzo and his cousin Frank, Angela Moretti, who ran their financial operations, probably a dozen others, all waiting for him to walk out there and be exactly who they expected. His phone buzzed. A text from Alara. Thank you for today. The kids loved you, especially Sophia. Another text followed immediately. She asked if you're coming back Wednesday. I told her you were. Don't make me a liar. Kael stared at the messages until his vision blurred, then he walked out into the warehouse. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Dante ran through business, territory disputes, collection issues, a shipment that had gone sideways in Baltimore. Kael listened, contributed when necessary, made the kind of decisions that had kept him alive and on top for 15 years. He was good at this. Had always been good at this. It came as naturally as breathing, but the whole time part of his mind was elsewhere. In a classroom with 8 kids and a teacher who looked at him like he might be worth saving. When the meeting broke up, Marco cornered him near the exit. Boss, can I ask you something? Depends on what it is. Marco glanced around, making sure they were alone. That woman from Friday night, the dinner. You seen her? Every instinct Kael had screamed danger. Admitting to Marco meant admitting to everyone. And everyone meant vulnerability, leverage, risk. But he was tired of lying. Yeah, he said. I am. Marco's expression cycled through surprise, confusion, and something that might have been concern. Does she know what you do? She knows enough. And she's okay with it? We haven't gotten that far yet. Kael. Marco stepped closer, lowering his voice. I've known you a long time, and I've never seen you like this. Whatever this is, whatever you're feeling, you need to be careful. There are people who'd use that against you. I know. Do you? Because Dante's already talking, and if he's talking, others are listening. Let them talk. It's not that simple. You taught me that. You taught all of us that weakness gets punished in this business. She's not weakness. Maybe not to you, but to them. Marco gestured vaguely toward the warehouse. She's a target. The second they figure out you care about something, they'll use it. You know they will. Kale did know. Had used that exact tactic himself more times than he could count. Find what someone loves, threaten it, watch them break. I'll handle it, he said. How? I don't know yet, but I will. Marco looked like he wanted to argue further, but something in Kael's expression stopped him. He nodded once and walked away. Kael stood in the empty warehouse for another 10 minutes, listening to the building settle, feeling the weight of every decision he'd made pressing down on his shoulders. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Alara. Forgot to ask, do you like coffee? There's a place near the school. We could grab some after Wednesday if you're free. Such a simple question, such a normal question. The kind of thing normal people asked each other every day without having to calculate the tactical implications or assess the potential collateral damage. Kael typed out a response. I like coffee. Wednesday sounds good. He hit send before he could second-guess it. The walk back to his car took him past the waterfront, where the Delaware River moved slow and dark under the city lights. He stopped at the railing, looking out at the water, and for the first time in 15 years allowed himself to imagine a different life. A life where he could walk into a coffee shop without cataloging exits, where he could meet someone without running background checks, where the hardest decision of his day was what to order, not who to hurt. His hands came up, signing into the empty air. What would you tell me to do? The question was aimed at his sister, at the ghost of a girl who'd been gone longer than she'd been alive, at the memory of someone who'd once believed he could be good. The river had no answers, just kept flowing, indifferent to his crisis. Kael's phone rang. Vincent. What? We've got a situation. North side. Someone's moving product in our territory without clearance. Back to reality. Back to the world that made sense, where the rules were clear and the consequences absolute. Handle it, Kael said. You don't want to be there? No, you're capable. Take Marco. Make it clean. A pause. You sure? I'm sure. He hung up before Vincent could question him further. Wednesday. He just had to make it to Wednesday. The next 2 days crawled past like punishment. Kael handled business on autopilot. Meetings with lawyers, discussions with accountants, a brief but pointed conversation with a councilman who'd forgotten which pocket he was supposed to be in. Everything functioned exactly as it was designed to function. Smooth, efficient, brutal when necessary. But his mind kept drifting back to that classroom, to Sophia's fierce questions and Alara's patient hands, and the way the afternoon light had slanted through those windows, making everything look softer than it had any right to be. Tuesday night, he got a call from Angela Moretti. We need to talk about the accounts, she said without preamble. What about them? There's movement I don't recognize. Someone's been asking questions, poking around. Kael's grip tightened on the phone. Who? Don't know yet. But they're good. Professional. This isn't local heat. Federal? Maybe, or private. Could be a rival doing reconnaissance. Either way, we need to be careful. Tighten everything up. Move the liquid assets to the backup accounts. And Angela, keep this quiet. I don't want panic. Already done. But Kael, whatever you're doing right now, whatever's got you distracted, you might want to put it on hold until we figure this out. Noted. He ended the call and stared at the ceiling of his bedroom, sleep suddenly impossible. Wednesday morning arrived gray and cold. Kael showered, dressed, forced himself to eat breakfast even though his stomach was twisted in knots. At 2:30, he was parked across from Riverside Elementary again, watching the building and the street and the slowly gathering clouds that promised rain. His phone rang. Dante. Kael almost didn't answer, but old habits won out. What? Where are you? Dante's voice was tight. Out. Are you at that goddamn school again? That's none of your business. It is when it puts us all at risk. Angela called me. Told me about the federal interest. You know what happens if they connect you to that woman? To those kids? They'll use them, Kael. They'll squeeze every drop of leverage they can find. I know. Then what the hell are you doing? Kael watched Alara's car pull into the parking lot. Watched her get out. balancing a coffee cup in her bag, moving with the kind of unself-conscious grace that came from someone who'd never had to calculate threat levels before crossing a parking lot. "I'm trying," he said quietly, "to figure out if there's anything left in me worth saving." Jesus Christ. Dante's exhale crackled across the line. "You're really going through with this." "I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I can't keep living the way I have been." "Then you're a fool, and fools don't last long in our world." The line went dead. Cale sat in his car for another 3 minutes, watching Alara disappear into the building. Every rational part of his brain screamed at him to drive away, to cut ties, to protect her by removing himself from her orbit before his world could touch hers. But his hands remembered the signs. His chest remembered how it felt to breathe without weight. He got out of the car and crossed the street. The afternoon unfolded like the previous one, but with subtle differences. The kids were louder, more comfortable with his presence. Sophia appointed herself his personal guide, explaining classroom rules with the kind of authority usually reserved for military generals. Another boy, Marcus, asked if Kyle could help him with his math homework, and Kyle found himself walking through long division using signs he had to look up on his phone. Elora watched from the front of the room, something soft in her expression that made Kyle's chest ache. At 4:30, after the last parent had collected their child, Elora signed. "Coffee?" "Coffee," Kyle agreed. They walked 3 blocks to a small shop called Grounds for Thought, the kind of place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls, and a chalkboard menu that changed daily. Alara ordered something complicated involving caramel and extra foam. Kyle got black coffee and felt judged by the barista's expression. They found a table in the corner, away from the window. Alara wrapped her hands around her cup and signed, "You look tired." "I am tired. Bad week. Complicated week. Want to talk about it?" Kale hesitated. The smart play was to deflect, to keep his 2 worlds separate and sealed. But sitting across from her, watching the way the coffee shop's warm light caught in her hair, he found himself breaking his own rules. "People in my life are concerned," he signed. "They think I'm making mistakes, getting distracted." "Are you?" "Probably. Do you regret it?" "No." The answer came faster than he expected. "But I don't know how to reconcile who I am with this. This? Being here, with you, in a world that doesn't run on fear and control." Alara set down her coffee. "You keep talking about yourself like you're just one thing, like you're not allowed to contain multitudes. In my experience, multitudes get you killed, or they keep you human." Before Kale could respond, the coffee shop door opened. Marco walked in, spotted them immediately, and his face went carefully blank. Kale's entire body went rigid. Marco approached the table slowly, hands visible, posture non-threatening, but his eyes were hard. "Boss, didn't expect to see you here." "Who is this?" Alara signed. "Someone from work," Kale signed back, then spoke aloud to Marco. "What do you want?" "Need to talk. It's urgent." "I'm busy." "It's about the thing Angela mentioned. It's gotten worse." Kale felt the walls closing in. He glanced at Alara, saw the concern in her eyes, then back at Marco. 5 minutes. They stepped outside. The temperature had dropped another 10 degrees. Marco lit a cigarette with shaking hands. "Vincent's been picked up," Marco said without preamble. "FBI grabbed him 2 hours ago. They've got him on wire fraud, money laundering, and about 6 other things that'll put him away for 20 years if he flips." Kale's blood went cold. "Does he know enough to hurt us?" "He knows enough to hurt you, directly." "Shit. It gets worse. Dante called a meeting for tonight. Emergency session. He's saying you need to consolidate, tighten up, cut any liabilities." The way Marco said liabilities made Kale's jaw clench. "You mean what I think he means?" He didn't say it explicitly, but yeah, I think he means anyone who could be used against you, anyone who makes you vulnerable. Kale looked through the coffee shop window. Alara was signing something into her phone, probably texting a friend, completely unaware that she'd just been classified as a threat to be eliminated. "Tell Dante I'll be there," Kyle said. "And her?" "She's not part of this." "She is now. The second you walked into that coffee shop with her, she became part of it. You know how this works, Kyle. You taught me how this works." "I'll handle it." "How?" "Because right now, the only way to handle this that Dante's going to accept is to cut ties. Completely." And if you won't do it willingly. Marco, Kale's voice dropped to something dangerous. You finish that sentence and we're going to have a serious problem. Marco took a long drag on his cigarette. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to keep you alive, but you're making it really goddamn hard. Noted. Meetings at what time? 9. Dock Street again. I'll be there. Marco flicked his cigarette into the gutter and walked away without another word. Kyle stood on the sidewalk, hands shoved in his pockets, feeling the world he'd built pressing against the world he wanted. Mutually exclusive, incompatible. One of them had to give. He went back inside. Alara looked up, signing, "Everything okay?" "No," he signed honestly. "But it will be." "That didn't look like nothing. It's work stuff, complicated. Does it have to do with me?" The question landed like a blade. Kyle could have lied. Should have lied. Instead, he signed, "Yes. I'm making things difficult for you. You're making things clearer for me. There's a difference." KL. "I don't know what world you live in. You haven't told me, and I haven't pushed, but I'm not stupid. I can see that you're carrying something heavy. And I need to know, is being around me putting you in danger?" "Maybe." "Then why are you here?" Kyle met her eyes. "'Cause for the first time in 15 years, I feel like I'm moving towards something instead of just running from it." Alara reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of his, not quite touching. A question in the gesture. Kyle looked at her hand, at the gap between them, at everything that simple contact would mean. Then he closed the distance. Her skin was warm, her fingers strong, and for one crystalline moment, everything else fell away. They sat like that for maybe 30 seconds before Kyle's phone started buzzing. He pulled it out, saw 6 texts from Dante and 3 missed calls from Angela, and knew his time was up. "I have to go," he signed. "When will I see you again?" "I don't know. Soon. I hope." Kyle. She tightened her grip on his hand. "Whatever's happening, whatever you're dealing with, be careful. I will. Promise. I promise." He stood, pulled on his coat, and walked out into the gathering dark. The temperature had dropped another 5 degrees. The first drops of rain were starting to fall. By the time he reached his car, it was pouring. The warehouse was already full when Kyle arrived at 8:50. Every major player in his organization was there. Faces grim, postures tense. Dante stood at the center, arms crossed, radiating fury barely held in check. "You're late," Dante said. "I'm here. Talk." Dante gestured to Angela, who stepped forward with a tablet. Vincent flipped, gave them everything. Names, accounts, locations. "We've got maybe 48 hours before they start executing warrants." The room erupted in angry voices. Kyle raised one hand, and silence fell instantly. "What's the exposure?" he asked. "Total," Angela said. "Every account I manage is compromised. We need to liquidate and move. Tonight." "Do it. What else?" "They're looking at you specifically. Vincent gave them a direct line from the money to your door. If they bring RICO charges—" "I know what RICO means," Kyle interrupted. "What's the timeline?" "Maybe a week. Maybe less if they move fast." Kale processed this, calculating odds and options. Around him, his people waited for orders, for leadership, for him to be exactly who they needed him to be. "All right," he said. "Here's what we're going to do. Angela, liquidate everything. Move it to the secondary and tertiary accounts. Nothing traceable. Marco, you and Tommy handle physical assets. Get them off property and into storage. Use the Pennsylvania locations, not Jersey. Dante." "We need to talk about your situation," Dante interrupted. "What situation?" "The woman, the school teacher. If the feds are building a case on you, she becomes leverage. They'll use her to pressure you. Or worse, they'll dig into her life and find ways to connect her to our business." "She's not connected to our business." "She is, if you keep seeing her." Dante's voice rose. "Jesus Christ, Kale. For once in your life, think strategically. You want to protect her? Cut ties. Disappear from her world. It's the only way to keep her safe." Kale felt every eye in the room on him, felt the weight of their expectations, their judgments, their need for him to be the man who made the hard calls. "No," he said quietly. "What?" "I said no." Dante's face went red. You're choosing her over this? Over us? Over everything we've built? I'm choosing to stop living like every human connection is a tactical liability. I'm choosing to be more than the sum of my worst decisions. That's suicide. Maybe, but it's my choice to make. The warehouse went dead silent. Kale could feel the shift in the room, confusion, anger, something that might have been respect. Marco looked like he was about to be sick. Angela's expression was unreadable. Dante stepped closer, lowering his voice to something almost gentle. Kale, listen to me. I've known you since you were a kid. I watched you build this. I watched you survive things that would have broken other men. But this is going to destroy you. And when you fall, you're taking all of us with you. Then maybe it's time for something new. There is no something new. There's this world or there's nothing. And if you choose nothing, you don't get to walk away clean. You know that. Kale did know that. Had always known that. The life he'd chosen didn't come with exit ramps or happy endings. It came with consequences. But for the first time, he was willing to face them. Meeting's over, he said. Everyone knows their assignments. Execute them. And Dante? Yeah? If anything happens to Alara Quinn, if anyone in this organization or outside it so much as looks at her wrong, there won't be enough of you left to identify. Are we clear? Dante's jaw worked. Crystal. Kael walked out without another word. The rain had intensified to a full storm by the time he reached his car. He sat behind the wheel, engine off, watching water stream down the windshield in sheets. His phone buzzed. A text from Alara. Did everything work out? Kyle stared at the message. 3 words. So simple. So impossibly complicated. He typed, "Not yet, but it will." Then he added, "Can I see you tomorrow?" The response came immediately. "Yes." "Where?" "Your place. If that's okay." "We need to talk." A pause. Then, "That sounds ominous. It's important." "Okay, tomorrow." 7? "I'll be there." Kale set the phone down and finally started the engine. The drive back to his apartment took twice as long as usual, the storm snarling traffic into gridlock. By the time he made it home, it was past midnight. He poured 3 fingers of whiskey, stood at his window, and watched Philadelphia glitter through the rain. Somewhere out there, federal agents were building a case that would bring down everything he'd spent 15 years constructing. Somewhere out there, his own people were questioning his judgment, his loyalty, his sanity. And somewhere out there, Alara Quinn was probably asleep, completely unaware that her world was about to collide with his in ways neither of them was prepared for. Kale raised his glass to the city and drank. Tomorrow, he'd tell her everything. Tomorrow, he'd give her the choice to run while she still could. Tomorrow, he'd find out if there was anything left in him worth saving. The storm raged on, and Kael Varelli stood in its eye, finally ready to face what came next. Kael didn't sleep, just paced his apartment until dawn broke gray and cold over the city, his mind running through every possible way the conversation with Alara could go. Most scenarios ended badly. Some ended catastrophically. None ended with her looking at him the same way she had across that coffee shop table. By 6:30, his phone was exploding with updates. Angela confirming the last transfers had gone through. Marco reporting that the physical assets were secure. Tommy sending a terse message that simply read, "We're clean, for now." And one from Dante that made Kael's jaw clench. "You're making a mistake. Last chance to fix it." He deleted it without responding. At 6:45, he showered, dressed in jeans and a sweater, instead of his usual armor of expensive suits, and stood in front of his bathroom mirror practicing signs he hadn't needed in years. The words felt clumsy on his hands, like trying to speak a language he'd once been fluent in, but had abandoned so long the grammar had calcified. "I need to tell you something. My world is dangerous. You deserve to know what you're walking into." The signs looked pathetic in his reflection, inadequate for what he needed to convey. He tried again. "I'm not who you think I am." Worse. That sounded like the opening line of every bad confession scene in every terrible movie. His hands dropped. Maybe there were no right words for this. Maybe honesty just meant showing up and letting the truth detonate however it was going to detonate. At 7:03, he pulled up outside Alara's building, a converted warehouse in the Northern Liberties neighborhood, all exposed brick and industrial windows. He'd run a background check on the address 3 days ago. couldn't help himself. Old habits. The building had decent security, a doorman who worked nights, cameras covering the entrance and parking garage. Not enough. Not nearly enough if someone wanted to get to her. Kyle killed the engine and sat for a moment, watching rain streak down his windshield. His phone buzzed. Text from Marco. Last chance to reconsider. He pocketed the phone without answering and got out. The lobby was empty except for a guy reading a newspaper behind the desk. He barely glanced up as Kyle signed in, just waved him toward the elevators with the bored efficiency of someone who'd seen every variety of visitor and stopped caring about distinguishing between them. Third floor. Unit 3C. Kyle raised his hand to knock, then paused. From inside, he could hear music, something with piano, muffled but clear enough that he recognized it as live performance, not a recording. Classical, probably. The kind of thing people played when they were thinking too hard about something. He knocked. The music stopped. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Sit. Alara stood there in jeans and an oversized sweater, hair pulled back in a messy bun, no makeup, looking more beautiful than she had any right to. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw him, then she smiled and stepped back, gesturing him inside. The apartment was small but warm, lots of plants, bookshelves crammed with titles in both English and what looked like academic texts on deaf education. Photos on the walls of her with friends, with students, with a couple who might have been her parents. A beat-up upright piano sat against one wall, sheet music scattered across its top. You play? Kale signed. Learned when I was a kid, before I lost my hearing, Alara signed back. Kept playing after. I can't hear it, but I can feel it. The vibrations. It helps me think. What were you thinking about? You. This conversation you said we needed to have. No point in delaying. Kale moved to the couch, sat down, and waited for Alara to join him. She curled into the opposite corner, tucked her feet under her, and watched him with those steady, intelligent eyes that had stopped him cold that first night at Marcello's. I need to tell you what I do, he signed. Who I am. And then you need to decide if you want me anywhere near your life. Okay, she signed simply. No fear, no hesitation, just attention. Kyle took a breath and started signing. I run a criminal organization, have for 15 years. We handle things that exist in the gray areas between legal and illegal. Sometimes we cross way over into illegal. Money laundering, loan sharking, protection. I've hurt people, ordered people hurt, made decisions that would put me in prison for the rest of my life if the wrong person ever got enough evidence. Alara's expression didn't change. She just kept watching. 3 days ago, one of my people got picked up by the FBI. He's talking, giving them everything, which means in the next week, maybe 2, they're going to come after me, after everyone connected to me. And that includes you now. How? Because I've been seen with you. Because people in my organization know about you. Because the second they start building their case, they're going to look at everyone in my life and figure out how to use them. Use them how? As leverage, as pressure. They'll threaten you to get to me, or they'll dig into your life looking for connections. And even if they don't find any, the investigation alone will destroy your reputation. You teach children, Alara. You work in a world that requires trust. The second your name gets attached to mine in some federal filing, that trust evaporates. Alara processed this in silence for a long moment. Then she signed, Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know. Because I'm done lying about who I am. And because I need you to understand that the smart thing, the only safe thing, is for you to walk away. Right now. Block my number. Forget you ever met me. I'll make sure no one bothers you. I'll disappear from your world completely. Is that what you want? The question hit like a physical blow. Kale's hands trembled as he signed, No, but what I want doesn't matter. Your safety does. Shouldn't I get to decide what matters to me? Not when the cost is this high. Alara unfolded from the couch, moved to the window, and stared out at the rain-soaked street below. Kale watched her shoulders rise and fall with deep breaths, watched her hands come up and drop again like she was trying to find words that didn't exist. Finally, she turned back. Can I ask you something? Anything. The man you are when you're in that classroom with those kids? Is he real? Kyle didn't hesitate. Yes. And the man who runs this organization, who makes these terrible decisions, is he real too? Yes. So which one am I supposed to believe? Both. I'm not asking you to ignore half of who I am. I'm asking you to see all of it and make a choice based on the whole picture. Alara crossed her arms, and for the first time since he'd met her, Kyle saw anger flash across her face. You know what's insulting? You showing up here, dumping all this on me, and then immediately telling me to run, like I'm some fragile thing that can't handle complexity. Like I haven't spent my entire life navigating a world that treats me as less than capable. That's not what I'm doing, isn't it? You're making my decision for me. You're deciding I can't handle the risk, can't handle the truth, can't handle you. I'm trying to protect you. I don't need your protection. I need your honesty, which you just gave me. Thank you. And now I need you to respect me enough to let me decide what I do with it. The force of her signing, sharp, precise, angry, made Kyle lean back. He'd faced down armed men without flinching, but Alara Quinn in full fury was something else entirely. Okay, he signed. You're right. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Just stop treating me like I'm made of glass. Fair. They stared at each other across the small apartment. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the windows hard enough that Kyle could feel the vibrations through the floor. Alara must have felt them too, because she glanced toward the glass, then back at him. I need time, she signed, to think about this, about what it means. Take all the time you need. Will you be honest with me, going forward, about everything? Yes. Even when it's ugly, especially then. Alara nodded slowly. Then she signed something that made Kyle's chest constrict. I don't scare easily, and I don't break as easily as you think I do. But I need to understand what I'm signing up for, so I need you to go. And I need you to give me space to figure this out. Kyle stood. Every instinct screamed at him to argue, to push, to make her understand that space was a luxury neither of them had. But he'd just promised honesty and respect, and that started with listening. How long? He signed. I don't know. I'll text you. Alara, go. Please. He went. The elevator ride down felt like descending into cold water. Kyle hit the lobby, nodded to the disinterested doorman, and pushed out into the rain. It soaked through his jacket immediately, but he barely noticed. Just walked to his car, got in, and sat there with water dripping from his hair, his hands gripping the steering wheel hard enough to hurt. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Yeah, Mr. Varelli? A woman's voice. Professional, clipped. This is Special Agent Rebecca Torres, FBI. I think we should talk. Every muscle in Kyle's body went rigid. I have nothing to say to you. That's fine. You don't have to say anything, but you should listen. We picked up Vincent Castellano 3 days ago. He's been very cooperative, very detailed. We know about the accounts, the properties, the network. We know enough to bring RICO charges that'll put you away for 25 to life. Then why are you calling me? Because I'm not interested in you. I'm interested in the people above you, the ones pulling strings you don't even know exist. And I think you might be interested in them too. Cale's mind raced. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Here's what I know, Mr. Varelli. You've been running your operation for 15 years. Clean, efficient, smart. But your middle management pretending to be the king. Someone's been feeding you resources, intel, protection. Someone with reach you can't match. And I think recently you've started to figure that out. She was fishing. Had to be. Except the cold certainty in his gut said she wasn't. I'm hanging up now, Kyle said. One more thing. We've been watching you, including your visits to Riverside Elementary, including your coffee dates with Miss Quinn. Pretty teacher, seems like a good person. Be a shame if she got caught up in all this. The threat was clear. Kyle's free hand clenched into a fist. You go near her. I don't have to. You already did that yourself. But here's the thing. I can make sure she stays out of this. Completely. No subpoenas, no interviews, no investigation into her background or associations. All you have to do is talk to me. And give you what? Names, connections. The people above you. I know they exist, Mr. Varelli. Vincent confirmed it before he stopped talking. Said you take orders from someone. Said there's a whole network you're part of that you barely understand. Give me that network, and I'll make sure Alara Quinn never knows any of this happened. Kyle closed his eyes. I need time to think. You have 48 hours. After that, I start executing warrants, and I can't control what happens to the people around you once that starts. The line went dead. Kale sat in his car, rain hammering the roof, and tried to process what he'd just heard. Someone above him, a network he barely understood. It didn't make sense. He'd built his organization from the ground up, made every decision, controlled every aspect. Except there had been moments over the years. Shipments that arrived without him ordering them. Connections that materialized when he needed them. Protection from law enforcement that seemed too convenient to be just luck. He'd attributed it to his own skill, his careful planning, his network of informants and bought officials. But what if it wasn't? What if he'd been someone's puppet this whole time? His phone buzzed. Text from Dante. Need to see you. Now. Same place. Kael stared at the message. Something cold settled in his chest. Dante had been his mentor, his partner, the man who taught him everything about this life. If there was someone above Kael, Dante would know. He started the engine and headed for Dock Street. The warehouse was dark when he arrived, just a single light burning in the back office. Kael's instincts screamed wrong, but he pushed through the door anyway, one hand resting on the gun tucked against his spine. Dante sat behind the metal desk, smoking a cigarette despite the no smoking sign on the wall. He looked older than Kael remembered, more worn, more tired, like the years had finally caught up with him. Close the door, Dante said. Kael didn't sit, just stood there, waiting. You got a call from the FBI, Dante said. It wasn't a question. How did you know that? Because I told them to call you. The words hung in the air like smoke. Kael's hand moved fractionally closer to his gun. Say that again. Dante took a long drag on his cigarette. I've been working with them for 18 months, ever since they picked me up on that tax thing you thought I beat. I didn't beat it. I made a deal. The world tilted. Kael grabbed the back of the chair to steady himself. You're lying. I wish I was. But no, I'm a confidential informant. Have been for a year and a half, feeding them just enough to keep them happy, just enough to keep you operating so they could build a bigger case. You son of a bitch. I didn't have a choice. Dante's voice rose, cracking. They had me dead to rights. 15 counts of tax evasion, another 10 of wire fraud. I was looking at 30 years. I'm 63 years old, Kael. I wasn't going to die in prison. So you sold me out instead. I sold out the organization. Not you. Never you. I've been protecting you this whole time, feeding them everyone else. Keeping your name as far from their files as possible. Bullshit. Vincent had my name. He gave them everything. Vincent was a mistake. I told him to keep his mouth shut, take the deal I'd arranged. But he panicked. Started talking about things I didn't know he knew, including you. Kael pulled his gun. Didn't aim it, just held it at his side. Give me one reason not to kill you right now. Because I'm the only thing standing between you and 25 to life. Dante stubbed out his cigarette. The FBI doesn't want you, Kael. They want what you know. They want the network. What network? I don't know what the hell anyone is talking about. Yes, you do. You just haven't put it together yet. Think about it. Where did your initial funding come from when you started out? How did you get access to those shipping routes? Who made sure the cops looked the other way during your first 3 years? Kael's mind raced backward. His early days in the business had been easy, suspiciously easy. He'd attributed it to his own intelligence, his careful planning. But Dante was right. There had been help, resources that appeared when he needed them. Who? Kael demanded. I don't know all of it, just pieces. But there's a group. Old money, new connections. They've been running operations in 6 cities for 20 years. They find people like you, smart, angry, ambitious, and they give you just enough rope to build something. Then they own you. Why? Control, leverage, profit. Does it matter? The point is, you've been working for them this whole time without knowing it, and they've been using you to move things, money, product, influence, that you never saw. Kael's finger tightened on the trigger. And you knew this. I suspected, but I didn't confirm it until the FBI started asking questions about transactions I'd never heard of. Accounts connected to yours that you never opened. That's when I realized how deep this went. So you made a deal. You'd give them the network, and in exchange, what? You walk? I disappear. New identity, witness protection, the whole package. And I tried to keep you out of it. I swear to God, Kael, I tried. Not hard enough. Kyle raised the gun. Dante didn't flinch, just met his eyes with something that might have been regret. You pull that trigger, Dante said quietly, and you guarantee Alara Quinn gets dragged into this. They're watching you. They're watching her. The second I turn up dead, they'll assume you're cleaning house, and she becomes target number 1 for a subpoena. The gun wavered. But if you don't pull that trigger, Dante continued, I can give you a way out. I can give you the name of one person in the network. One name that'll be enough to satisfy the FBI and keep them from coming after you or anyone you care about. What name? The person who set all this up. The one who's been pulling your strings for 15 years. You give them that name and you're done. Free. Clean slate. Kyle wanted to pull the trigger so badly his hand shook. But the image of Alara's face, the trust in her eyes when she'd asked if he'd be honest, stopped him. Who? He asked again. Dante pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and slid it across the desk. This is who really owns you. Kyle picked up the paper with his free hand, unfolded it, and felt the floor drop out from under him. The name written there in Dante's careful handwriting made no sense. Made terrible, perfect sense. Marco Tesoro. No, Kyle said. That's impossible. Marco's been with me for 10 years. He's loyal. He's a plant. Always has been. They put him in your organization when you started expanding, made sure he rose through the ranks, made sure he had your ear. Every major decision you've made in the last decade, who'd you run it by first? Marco, Kyle whispered. Exactly. And who knew about Alara before anyone else? Who showed up at that coffee shop? Who's been sending reports on your movements to people you've never met? The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Every warning Marco had given him about Alara, every concerned conversation about his judgment, it hadn't been loyalty. It had been control. Where is he? Kale's voice came out flat, dead. Safe house in Jersey. I can give you the address. But Kyle, you need to understand what you're walking into. Marco's not alone. There'll be others, and if you go after him, you're declaring war on people who have more resources than you can imagine. I don't care. You should, because they will come after everyone you've ever cared about, including her. Kyle lowered the gun, tucked it back into his waistband. Give me the address. Dante wrote it down, slid it across the desk. What are you going to do? What I should have done years ago. Stop letting other people run my life. That's suicide. Probably. But it's my choice. Kyle turned to leave. Dante's voice stopped him at the door. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I know you won't believe that, but it's true. You were like a son to me, and I failed you. Kale looked back. Yeah, you did. He walked out into the rain. The drive to Jersey took 90 minutes through storm traffic. Kale spent every second of it calling in favors, assembling resources, preparing for what came next. He called Angela, told her to move the last of the liquid assets into accounts only he could access. He called Tommy, gave him a list of names and instructions to keep them safe. He didn't call Marco. Didn't want to tip his hand. The safe house was in a neighborhood that tried to look suburban and failed. Cookie-cutter homes with 2 small yards, cars that cost more than the houses, the smell of desperation masked by fresh paint and lawn services. Number 447. Dark windows. A car in the driveway that Kyle recognized as one of their fleet vehicles. He parked 3 houses down, checked his gun, and approached on foot. The front door was locked, but not alarmed, sloppy. Or maybe Marco was expecting him. Either way, Kyle picked it in 45 seconds and slipped inside. The house was silent, empty furniture, the kind that came with short-term rentals. No personal effects. No signs of life except for a light burning upstairs. Kyle climbed the stairs with his gun drawn, every sense screaming alert. The bedroom door at the end of the hall was cracked open. He could see shadows moving inside. He kicked it open. Marco sat in a chair by the window, hands folded in his lap, looking calm. Too calm. Like he'd been waiting. Took you longer than I expected, Marco said. Kale aimed the gun at his head. How long? Since the beginning. I was recruited out of college, psychology degree, specialization in behavioral manipulation. They saw potential, trained me, placed me with you when you were still small enough to be molded. Who are they? Does it matter? They're everywhere and nowhere. Old families with new methods. People who figured out that real power doesn't come from being visible. It comes from controlling the people who are. And Alara? Something flickered in Marco's expression. She was never part of the plan. That was all you. And honestly, it screwed everything up. You were supposed to be predictable, controllable, but you started wanting things we didn't program into you. Like what? Like redemption. Like love. Like a way out. Marco shook his head. It made you dangerous, unpredictable. So yeah, when you started seeing her, I reported it, recommended extraction. They disagreed, thought they could use it. Turns out they were wrong. Kale's finger tightened on the trigger. Give me names. Or what? You'll kill me? Go ahead. I'm insured. The second I don't check in, they activate contingencies. And guess who's at the top of the contingency list? He didn't have to say the name. Kale knew. So here's how this plays out, Marco continued. You can kill me, feel good about it for maybe 30 seconds, and then they'll erase Alara Quinn from existence. Won't even be dramatic about it. Just an accident, a home invasion, something random and untraceable. Or what? Or you walk away. Completely. You disappear from Philadelphia. You never contact her again. You give up everything you've built. And in exchange, they leave her alone. She gets to live her life, teach her students, never knowing any of this happened. That's not a choice. It's the only choice you get. Kael stood there, gun aimed, mind racing through scenarios. He could shoot Marco, take the war to whoever was pulling the strings, fight with everything he had. But Marco was right. The second he started fighting, Alara became a target, and he couldn't protect her from an enemy he couldn't see. How do I know they'll keep their word? Kyle asked. You don't. But you know what happens if you don't take the deal, so really, what choice do you have? None. He had no choice, and that realization felt like drowning. Kael lowered the gun. I want proof. I want confirmation that she's safe. You'll have it. 24 hours after you leave the city, you'll get a message. Proof of life, proof she's untouched, and as long as you stay gone, it stays that way. And if I don't leave, then the first thing that happens is she loses her job. Investigation into her background, allegations of impropriety, doesn't matter if they're true. Her reputation gets destroyed, then it gets worse from there. Kyle felt something inside him crumble. This was it, the moment where every choice led to loss. He could save himself or save her, but not both. He'd spent 15 years building power, accumulating control, making sure he was never vulnerable. And in the end, none of it mattered. Because the second he cared about something more than his own survival, all that power became meaningless. I need to see her, Kyle said. One last time. No. I'm not asking. Marco's expression hardened. You see her, you risk changing her behavior, making her suspicious, making her a problem. You want her safe? You disappear. Tonight. No goodbyes, no explanations. You just vanish. She deserves better than that. She deserves to live. You going to take that from her because you can't handle a clean break? The question landed like a blade between his ribs. Kyle stood there, gun hanging useless at his side, and felt the full weight of what he'd become. A man so compromised, so embedded in a world of violence and manipulation that even his attempt at something good had turned toxic. Fine, he said finally. I'll go, but I need one thing from you. What? You make sure someone watches over her, not obviously, not intrusively, but someone who makes sure she stays safe. Real safe. Not just from your people, but from everyone. That's not how this works. Make it how this works, or I start shooting and see how many of you I can take down before the contingencies activate. Marco studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, you have my word, someone will watch over her. Your word means nothing to me. Then you'll just have to trust that it's in our interest to keep her safe. Because if something happens to her, you become unpredictable again, and we've invested too much in controlling you to let that happen. Kale turned toward the door, stopped. Tell me something, was any of it real? The mentorship from Dante? The brotherhood with the others? Any of it? Does it matter? Yeah, it does. Marco sighed. Some of it. People are complicated. Even when they're playing roles, pieces of who they really are bleed through. Dante genuinely cared about you, even while he was selling you out. I genuinely respected your intelligence, even while I was manipulating it. It's not all or nothing. That's supposed to make me feel better? No, it's supposed to be the truth, which is what you asked for. Cale walked out without another word. The rain had stopped by the time he reached his car. The sky was clearing, stars appearing between breaking clouds. He sat behind the wheel and pulled out his phone. One last text to Alara. That was all he'd allow himself. He typed, "I'm sorry. You were right to need time. I can't give you what you deserve. Take care of yourself. And those kids. Especially Sophia." His thumb hovered over send for a full minute. Then he deleted it. Wrote instead, "Something came up. I have to leave town. Might be a while. I'm sorry." Still inadequate, still cowardly. He deleted that too. Finally, he wrote, "I'm sorry." 2 words. Not enough. But all he could manage. He hit send. Then he turned off his phone, tossed it out the window into a storm drain, and started driving. Away from Philadelphia, away from Alara, away from the wreckage of every choice that had brought him to this moment. He didn't have a destination. Didn't matter, as long as it was far from her. The highway stretched out ahead, empty and endless. Kyle drove through the night, watching the city lights fade in his rearview mirror, feeling every mile put more distance between him and the only thing that had made him feel human in 15 years. Somewhere behind him, Alara would wake up to that message, would read those 2 words and try to make sense of them, would maybe feel relieved, maybe feel hurt, maybe feel nothing at all, and she'd be safe. That was what mattered, even if it destroyed him to make it true. The stars disappeared behind clouds again as he crossed the state line. Kyle kept driving, his hands gripping the wheel, his mind empty of everything except the road ahead and the life he was leaving behind. He'd wanted redemption, wanted to be more than the sum of his worst choices. Instead, he'd learned the cruelest lesson of all, that sometimes the most loving thing you could do was walk away, even when every cell in your body screamed to stay and fight, especially then. The highway stretched on into darkness, and Kyle Varelli drove into it alone, carrying nothing but the weight of what he'd lost and the knowledge that he'd chosen this. For her. Always for her. Kyle made it 70 miles before he turned the car around. The decision came at a rest stop just past the Delaware border, 3 in the morning, standing in fluorescent-lit bathroom that smelled like industrial cleaner and broken dreams. He'd been staring at his reflection in the scratched mirror, water dripping from his hands, when the clarity hit him like a gunshot. He was running. Again. Just like he'd run from his sister's memory for 15 years. Just like he'd run from every hard truth by burying it under violence and control. And this time, the running would cost him the only thing that had ever made him want to stop. Alara had asked him to be honest, had demanded he respect her enough to let her make her own choices. And his response had been to make the biggest choice of her life without even telling her it was happening. Marco was right about one thing. Kyle had been controlled his whole life. First by grief, then by Dante. Then by people whose names he didn't even know. But standing in that bathroom, hands shaking, face haggard in the mirror, he realized something fundamental had shifted. He was done being controlled, even if it killed him, even if it killed everything. The drive back to Philadelphia took an hour. Kale spent it making calls on a burner phone he'd bought from the rest stop vending machine. The first was to Tommy Rizzo. "Boss?" Tommy's voice was thick with sleep and confusion. "Thought you were gone. Change of plans. I need you to do something for me. And Tommy, this is off the books. Nobody knows, not Angela, not Dante, nobody." "What do you need?" "I need you to find out everything you can about Marco Tesoro, who he talks to, where he goes, who pays his bills. I need a complete breakdown by noon." Silence. Then, "Marco's dirty?" "Worse than dirty. He's the reason we're all compromised. Can you do this without him knowing?" "Yeah, I can do it." "Good. And Tommy, arm yourself. Things are about to get violent." The second call went to Angela Moretti. She picked up on the first ring, voice sharp and alert despite the hour. "I thought you were running," she said. "Who told you that?" "Marco said you'd decided to disappear. Smart move, considering the heat. Marco's a liar and a plant. He's been feeding information to people above us for years. I need you to freeze him out of every account, every asset, every piece of infrastructure he has access to. Do it quietly. Do it now." "Kyle, if you're wrong about this..." I'm not. You're getting to find proof in the next few hours. When you do, I need you to be ready to move fast. Can you do that? A pause. You're really going to war over this? Not over it, through it. That's suicide. Probably. You in or out? Another pause, longer this time. Then, in. But Kyle, you better be right. I am. The third call was the hardest. He dialed the number from memory, even though he'd sworn he'd never use it again. It rang 4 times before a woman's voice answered, crisp and professional, despite the hour. Special Agent Torres. It's Kyle Virelli. We need to talk. In person. Now. Mr. Virelli, I wasn't expecting to hear from you so soon. Things have changed. I'm willing to give you what you want, but I need something in return. I'm listening. Protection for Alara Quinn. Real protection. Federal witness security. New identity if necessary. She gets pulled out of this completely, and nobody, not your people, not mine, not the network, ever touches her. That's a significant ask. I'm offering you a significant prize. I'm offering you the entire network. Names, connections, bank accounts, the whole structure. Everything I know and everything I can get. But only if she's safe first. Torres was quiet for a moment. You understand what you're offering me? You're essentially signing your own death warrant. The people you're talking about don't forgive betrayal. I know. Then why? Because she deserves better than being collateral damage in someone else's war. Where are you right now? 30 minutes from the city. There's a diner on Columbus Boulevard near the waterfront, Kelly's. I'll be there at 4:30. Come alone. Mr. Virelli, alone, Agent Torres, or I disappear for real this time and you get nothing. He hung up before she could respond. The last call was one he didn't want to make but couldn't avoid. Dante's number rang 6 times before going to voicemail. Kyle didn't leave a message, just hung up and tried again. Same result. On the 3rd attempt, Dante picked up. You should be halfway to Canada by now, Dante said. I'm coming back. That's a mistake. Probably. But I need to know something. When you made your deal with the FBI, did you know Marco was running me? Silence. Dante, answer me. I suspected, didn't confirm it until recently, but yeah, I knew someone had their hooks in you. Didn't know it was him specifically until about 6 months ago. And you didn't tell me. What was I supposed to say? Hey, Kyle, by the way, your most trusted lieutenant is a plant and you've been a puppet your whole career? That would have gone great. You could have tried. I was trying to protect you. By lying? By selling me out to the feds? That's your version of protection? Dante's voice dropped. I'm an old man who made old man mistakes. I got scared. I got selfish. I chose my own survival over yours, and I'll regret that until the day I die. But I need you to understand something, Kyle. If you go back there, if you start a war with these people, they will erase you, and her, and everyone you've ever cared about. Then I better move fast. This isn't a joke. Do I sound like I'm joking? I've spent 15 years letting other people run my life, letting fear make my decisions. I'm done. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything you know about the network, every name, every connection, every piece of leverage you've collected. And you're going to do it in the next 2 hours. Or what? Or I tell them you've been working with the FBI. Let them clean up that mess instead of me having to. You wouldn't. Try me. The line was silent for a long moment. Then Dante sighed, and Kyle heard defeat in the sound. There's a storage unit, North Philly, off Broad Street, Unit 247. Combination is 183512. Everything I've got is in there. Files, recordings, photographs, 20 years of insurance. It's yours. Thank you. Kyle, for what it's worth, I'm sorry about all of it. Yeah, me too. He ended the call and kept driving. Philadelphia's skyline appeared on the horizon as the first gray light of dawn started breaking through the clouds. Kyle felt something settle in his chest, not peace exactly, but purpose. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he wasn't running from something. He was running toward it. Kelly's diner sat on a corner lot overlooking the Delaware River, all chrome and faded vinyl and the smell of coffee that had been brewing since 1987. Kale arrived at 4:20, parked where he could see both entrances, and waited. At 4:32, a dark sedan pulled up. Agent Rebecca Torres stepped out alone, looking exactly like her voice suggested. Mid-40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. She scanned the parking lot with practiced efficiency before walking inside. KL gave her 30 seconds, then followed. The diner was nearly empty. A trucker in the corner booth, a waitress who looked like she'd been working this shift since the Reagan administration, and Torres sitting at a table by the window with her back to the wall. Smart. Kale slid into the seat across from her. The waitress appeared immediately, poured coffee neither of them had asked for, and disappeared again. "You look like hell," Torres said. "I've had a long night, so talk. Convince me this isn't a waste of my time." Kyle pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket and slid it across the table. "That's the address of a storage unit containing 20 years of documentation on a criminal network operating in 6 cities. Names, bank accounts, recordings, photographs, everything your investigation needs, and then some." Torres unfolded the paper, read it, then looked back at him. "How'd you get this?" "Someone who's smarter than I gave him credit for. Someone who's been collecting insurance his whole career." "And he's just handing it over?" "Let's say his options have become limited." Torres pocketed the paper. "Assuming this is real, what do you want in exchange?" "Alara Quinn gets full protection. Federal witness security if necessary. She's pulled out of her life, given a new identity, placed somewhere safe. And it happens today, before anyone in the network knows what's coming. That's not how witness protection works. There's a process." "I don't care about your process. You want the network, you do this my way. She's in danger right now. Every hour that passes increases the risk. So you're going to call whoever you need to call, pull whatever strings you need to pull, and you're going to make this happen in the next 6 hours." Torres studied him with those sharp eyes. "You're in love with her. That's none of your business." "It is when it's my leverage. You really think I'm going to let you walk away from this? The second I have what I need, you become a witness too. Protective custody, testimony, the whole deal. I'm not walking away. I'm buying her safety with my cooperation. What happens to me after is irrelevant. You understand that the people you're betraying will come after you. Witness protection or not, they'll hunt you, and they have resources that make the FBI look underfunded." "I know. And you're willing to die for her?" Kale met her eyes. "I'm willing to die so she doesn't have to." Something shifted in Torres's expression. Not sympathy exactly, but recognition. "Okay, I'll make the calls, but I need something from you first. The storage unit could be empty, could be filled with junk. I need proof you're offering something real." Kale pulled out his phone. The burner. Not his regular one that was currently sitting in a Jersey storm drain. He scrolled through the contacts and held up a name. "This is Marco Tesoro. He's the primary plant in my organization. He's been running me for 10 years on behalf of the network. You grab him in the next 2 hours, before anyone knows what's happening, he'll flip. He's got no loyalty to them. He's a hired gun. Offer him a deal, and he'll give you everything." Torres photographed the contact information. "Where is he now?" "Safe house in Jersey. I can give you the exact address." "Do it." Kyle wrote it down. Torres pulled out her phone and made a call, stepping away from the table. Kale watched through the window as she paced, gesturing sharply, her voice rising even though he couldn't hear the words. 5 minutes later, she came back. "I've got teams moving on the storage unit and the safe house. If this checks out, I'll have approval for Quinn's protection by noon." "Not good enough. I need it done now." "I can't snap my fingers and make a federal protection detail appear, Mr. Varelli. These things take time." Time she doesn't have. The second Marco realizes he's been burned, he'll activate contingencies. And she's at the top of that list. "Then maybe you should be the one protecting her until we can move." Kale's jaw clenched. "I'm trying to keep her out of this, not drag her deeper into it." "Little late for that. You involved her the second you walked into that restaurant. Now you either trust me to do my job, or you handle it yourself until I can get resources in place." The waitress refilled their coffee. Kale stared into the black liquid, seeing his reflection distorted on its surface. Torres was right. He'd involved Alara. He'd made her a target by caring about her. And now the only way to protect her was to be exactly what he'd been trying to escape, the violent, calculating operator who solved problems with force. "How long until your teams hit those locations?" he asked. Torres checked her phone. "Storage unit in 20 minutes. Safe house in 40. Why? Because I need to be somewhere when that happens, and I need you to give me a head start. A head start to do what? To make sure Alara's safe before Marco's people realize what's happening. Absolutely not. You're not going anywhere near her. The second you do, you compromise her as a witness. She's not a witness. She's a civilian who had the misfortune of meeting me. And if I don't get to her first, she's a dead civilian. Torres leaned forward. Listen to me very carefully. You go to her now, you put her at more risk. You trust me to do this right, and she stays safe. You go cowboy, and you're the reason she ends up dead. Or I'm the reason she stays alive long enough for your protection to kick in. They stared at each other across the table. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed. Outside, the river moved slow and dark under the breaking dawn. 1 hour, Torres said finally. You keep her safe for 1 hour, and I'll have a team in place. But Kael, you touch anyone, you hurt anyone, you do anything that compromises my investigation, and our deal is off. You understand? I understand. Then go. And Kael, don't make me regret this. He was already moving toward the door. The drive to Alara's apartment took 12 minutes. Kael spent it running scenarios, calculating risks, preparing for every possible complication. His gun was loaded. His mind was clear. His hands were steady. Everything he'd tried to leave behind had come rushing back. But this time, he wasn't using it for power or control. He was using it for something that actually mattered. He parked in the alley behind her building, killed the engine, and pulled out the burner phone. One text to Tommy. How close are you to the intel I need? Tommy's response came immediately. Got enough to bury him. Sending it now. The files started coming through. Bank records showing payments from shell corporations. Phone logs showing calls to numbers in 3 states. Photographs of Marco meeting with people Kael didn't recognize. And buried in the middle of it all, an intercepted email that made his blood run cold. Subject: Quinn situation. Recommend immediate extraction if KV doesn't comply with departure timeline. Asset has served its purpose as leverage. Elimination approved pending your confirmation. The timestamp was 40 minutes ago. Kael was out of the car and moving before his conscious mind caught up with his body. He took the fire escape 3 steps at a time, reaching Alara's floor in less than 30 seconds. Her apartment windows were dark. No movement visible. No signs of forced entry. He jimmied the window lock, a skill he hadn't used in years but his hands remembered, and slipped inside. The apartment was silent. Kael moved through it with his gun drawn, clearing each room with mechanical efficiency. Living room empty, kitchen empty, bathroom empty, bedroom. The door was closed. Light showed underneath. Kael pressed his ear against it, listening. Nothing. He tried the handle, locked from the inside. Alara? He called out, keeping his voice low. No response. Kael stepped back and kicked the door open. Alara sat on her bed, very still, very quiet, with a man Kael didn't recognize sitting beside her with a gun pressed against her ribs. She wasn't hurt, wasn't crying, just staring at Kael with wide eyes that held fear and confusion and something that might have been relief. The man with the gun smiled. Kael Virelli, Marco said you'd come back, said you were too stupid to stay gone. Kael kept his gun trained on the man's head. Let her go. Can't do that. She's my insurance policy. You put down your weapon and maybe we all walk away from this. You know that's not going to happen. Then we've got a problem, because I will kill her. Marco's orders were very clear. She dies if you don't comply. Alara's hands moved, slowly, carefully. She was signing something. Who is this? What's happening? Kael couldn't answer, couldn't look away from the man with the gun. His mind was running calculations at lightning speed. Distance to target, 12 feet. Time to fire, 0.8 seconds. Probability of hitting the gunman before he could shoot Alara, 60%. Maybe 70 if Kael got lucky. Not good enough odds. Not with her life. Here's what's going to happen, Kael said, his voice dropping into the register that had made men twice his size back down. You're going to stand up. You're going to walk out of this apartment, and you're going to tell Marco that if he wants me dead, he can come do it himself. The gunman laughed. You really think I'm that stupid? The second I stand up, you shoot me. Probably. But you're dead either way. You pull that trigger, I kill you before her body hits the floor. You try to use her as a shield, I shoot through her to get to you. Your only chance at survival is walking out that door right now. Marco said you'd gone soft. Said the girl made you weak. Marco was wrong. The gunman's eyes flicked between Kael and Alara, calculating. Kael could see the math happening behind them, could see the moment fear started winning over bravado. I'm going to stand up, the gunman said slowly, and you're going to lower your weapon. No. Then she dies. Then you die half a second later, and Marco loses his leverage. Is that really what you want to tell him? That you failed because you couldn't follow through? The gunman's hand was shaking now, barely visible, but there. Kael saw it and pressed harder. You're what, 25, 26? Whole life ahead of you. You really want to die in this apartment for a boss who won't even remember your name after you're gone? Shut up. What's your name? I said shut up, because I want to know what to put on your grave marker. Figured you deserved that much. The gun barrel wavered, just an inch, just for a second, but it was enough. Kael fired. The shot took the gunman in the shoulder, spinning him away from Alara. His gun went off, wild, high, punching a hole in the ceiling. Kael was already moving, crossing the distance in 3 steps, driving the gunman into the wall with enough force to crack plaster. The second shot Kael fired was point blank, center mass. The gunman dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Alara was screaming, a sound Kael couldn't hear but could feel in his bones, raw and terrified and alive. He turned to her, gun still raised, and saw her pressed against the headboard with her hands over her ears, eyes squeezed shut. Kael safed his weapon and moved to her, touched her shoulder. She flinched, then opened her eyes. When she saw it was him, something broke in her expression. Her hands came up, signing frantically. What's happening? Who was that? Why did you— We need to leave, Kael signed back. Right now. More could be coming. I don't understand. I know. I'll explain everything. But we have to move. He pulled her off the bed, guided her around the body. She wouldn't look at it, kept her eyes fixed on his face like he was the only solid thing in a world gone liquid. Kael grabbed her coat from the closet, her phone from the nightstand, and led her toward the door. They made it to the hallway before the second gunman appeared. This one was faster, more professional, didn't waste time talking, just raised his weapon. Kael shoved Alara behind him and returned fire. The hallway erupted in noise and muzzle flash. Kael took 2 rounds to his left side, felt them punch through his ribs like hammers, but stayed on his feet long enough to put 3 into the second gunman's chest. The man went down. Kael staggered. Alara caught him, her face white with shock, hands signing frantically. You're bleeding! Oh God, you're bleeding so much! Fire escape, Kael signed with hands that weren't quite steady anymore. Go, now. I'm not leaving you. Go! She didn't. Just grabbed his arm and hauled him toward the window with strength he didn't know she had. The fire escape was narrow, slick with morning dew. Kael could feel blood running hot down his side, soaking through his shirt. His vision was starting to blur at the edges. They made it to the ground floor. Kael's car was 20 feet away. Might as well have been 20 miles. Can you drive? He tried to ask, then remembered she couldn't hear him. His hands came up to sign the question, but they wouldn't cooperate anymore. Just trembled uselessly. Alara seemed to understand anyway. She dug through his pockets, found the keys, and half-dragged him to the passenger side. Got him in, ran around to the driver's seat, started the engine with hands that shook so badly it took 3 tries. Then they were moving. Alara drove like she'd never driven before, fast, reckless, running red lights and stop signs. Kael pressed his hand against the wounds in his side and tried to stay conscious. Tried to remember what he needed to tell her. Tried to remember Torres's number. Tried to remember anything beyond the white-hot pain radiating through his torso. His phone buzzed. He fumbled for it. Text from Torres. Team in position at Quinn's building. Where the hell are you? Kael tried to type a response. His fingers wouldn't work. The phone slipped from his hand. Alara was talking to him. He could see her mouth moving, see the panic in her eyes when she glanced over. But he couldn't understand, couldn't focus. The world was narrowing to a tunnel of gray static. She pulled over. They were somewhere he didn't recognize. An industrial area, empty warehouses and chain-link fences. Alara put the car in park and turned to him, and Kyle saw tears streaming down her face. Her hands moved, slow, clear, making sure he could understand. "Don't you dare die on me. Don't you dare." Kale tried to smile, tried to sign back, managed only, "Sorry." Then the gray static swallowed everything, and he knew nothing more. When Kale opened his eyes again, the first thing he saw was white ceiling tiles and fluorescent lights. The second thing was pain, deep, grinding agony that radiated from his left side with every breath. The third thing was Alara, asleep in a chair beside the hospital bed, with her head pillowed on her arms. He must have made a sound because she jerked awake. When she saw his eyes were open, her face crumpled. She reached for his hand, squeezed it so hard his bones creaked. "You're awake," she signed with her free hand. "You've been out for 14 hours. Where?" "University of Pennsylvania Hospital. They had to remove your spleen. You almost died. Twice." Kyle processed that. Tried to sit up. Failed spectacularly. Alara pressed him back down with surprising force. "Don't move. The doctor said you'll rupture your stitches. What happened? After I passed out? I drove until I found a hospital. Carried you inside. Well, dragged you. You're heavier than you look. There were police. FBI. A woman named Torres who's been here 3 times asking when you'd wake up. Did they hurt you?" "No. They questioned me. I told them I didn't know anything," which was true. "I still don't know anything, KL, except that men with guns tried to kill us, and you killed them first. And now you're in a hospital bed looking like death." Her hands were shaking. KL squeezed her fingers. "I'm sorry," he signed. "I'm so sorry. Stop apologizing and start explaining." So he did. Told her everything. The network, Marco's betrayal, the deal with Torres, the men sent to kill her, his stupid, reckless plan to come back and protect her himself instead of trusting the FBI. When he finished, Alara sat back in her chair and stared at him for a long moment. Then she signed something he didn't expect. "You're an idiot." "I know. You could have died." "I know. You almost did die. And then what? I'm just supposed to go on living, knowing you died trying to save me from a situation I never asked to be in? Better than you dying. That's not your choice to make." Her hands were sharp, angry. Kyle had never seen her like this, furious and terrified in equal measure. "You keep deciding things for me," she signed. "You decided to leave without telling me why. You decided to come back without asking if I wanted you to. You decided my life was worth more than yours without consulting me about the valuation. Do you see the pattern here? I was trying to protect you. I don't need your protection. I need your honesty. I need you to treat me like an equal instead of something fragile that'll break if the world breathes on it too hard." Kale didn't have a response to that, just lay there, feeling every one of his injuries, and realized she was absolutely right. "I'm sorry," he signed again. "You're right, about all of it. Damn right I am." She stood up, paced to the window, then back. "The FBI is offering me witness protection. New identity, new city, new life. They say it's the only way to guarantee my safety." Kale's chest constricted. "Are you going to take it?" "I don't know. They said I have 48 hours to decide." She sat back down. "Torres also said they're going to need you to testify, that you're the key to bringing down this entire network. She said you'll be in protective custody for months, maybe years. Probably. So either way, we're done. Either I disappear into witness protection, or you disappear into testimony preparation. And this," she gestured between them, "whatever this was, it's over." Kale wanted to argue, wanted to tell her they could figure something out, but he just promised honesty, and honesty meant admitting she was right. "Yeah," he signed. "It's over." Alara's eyes filled with tears. She brushed them away angrily. "I hate that. I hate that I finally meet someone who actually sees me, who learns my language, who looks at me like I'm not broken. And it turns out you're the most dangerous person I could have possibly met." "I know. Stop saying that. Stop agreeing with me. Fight back. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me there's some way this works out." "I can't." "Because you're not wrong." She made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. "You're really bad at this." "At what?" "Goodbye scenes. You're supposed to make promises you can't keep. Tell me you'll find me. That love conquers all. Something romantic and stupid. Would you believe me if I did?" "No." but it might make me feel better. Kale managed to sit up this time, ignoring the way his stitches pulled and his vision grayed. He reached for her hand again. I can't promise I'll find you, he signed. I can't promise this works out. But I can promise that meeting you changed me. That for the first time in 15 years, I felt like maybe I could be something more than what I'd become. And I can promise that even if I never see you again, I'll remember you. Every day. For the rest of my life. Elara broke, pressed her face against his chest, carefully, mindful of his injuries, and cried in a way that made her whole body shake. Kyle held her as well as he could, with tubes running from his arms and bandages wrapped around his torso, and felt something inside him crack wide open. They stayed like that until a knock on the door interrupted them. Agent Torres walked in, looking tired but satisfied. Mr. Varelli, glad to see you're conscious. We need to talk. Elara started to stand. Torres held up a hand. You can stay, Ms. Quinn. This concerns you too. She pulled up a chair, sat down with the air of someone delivering news she'd rehearsed. Marco Tesoro is in custody, singing like a canary. The storage unit contents have been verified and are even more damaging than expected. We've made 11 arrests in the last 12 hours, with more coming. The network is essentially dismantled. What about the people above Marco? Kael asked, then realized she couldn't hear him. He signed it to Elara, who translated aloud. We're working our way up the chain, Torres said. It's going to take time, but we've got enough to keep you and Ms. Quinn safe during the process. What does that mean? Elara asked. It means you both enter witness protection. Together or separately, your choice. New identities, new locations. You'll need to testify eventually, but we can keep you secure until then. Kael and Elara looked at each other. A whole conversation happened in that glance. Possibilities and impossibilities, hope and pragmatism, the weight of everything unsaid. Can we have a minute? Elara asked. Torres nodded and stepped outside. When they were alone again, Elara signed, What do you want to do? What do you want to do? I asked first. Kael took a breath that hurt all the way down. I want to be selfish. I want to ask you to come with me. To start over somewhere new where nobody knows who we were. But that's not fair to you. Your whole life is here, your students, your friends, your career. I can't ask you to give that up. What if I want to give it up? Do you? She didn't answer immediately, just sat there, worrying her bottom lip, hands resting in her lap. I don't know, she finally signed. I'm terrified. Of you, of this situation, of what it means to walk away from everything I've built. But I'm also terrified of letting you go, of spending the rest of my life wondering what could have been. That's not a good enough reason to upend your life. Maybe not. But it's my reason, my choice. And you promised to let me make it. Kael felt something warm blooming in his chest despite the pain. Are you sure? No. But I don't think certainty is possible here. I think the best we get is being uncertain together instead of uncertain alone. Before Kael could respond, the door burst open. Not Torres this time. Marco, with blood on his shirt and wild eyes and a gun that must have come from somewhere in the hospital because there was no way he'd walked in armed. You son of a bitch, Marco snarled. You couldn't just walk away. You couldn't just take the out I gave you. Kael moved without thinking, threw himself between Marco and Elara, despite the way it tore his stitches open. Blood bloomed hot through his bandages. Marco, don't do this. Why not? I'm done either way. They've got everything. My career, my cover, my entire life. Gone. Because you decided to grow a conscience. Killing us won't fix that. No. But it'll feel really good. The gun came up. Kael tensed, calculating odds that had gotten significantly worse in the last 30 seconds. Then Torres appeared in the doorway behind Marco with her own weapon drawn. FBI, drop it! Marco spun toward her. Kael lunged. The gun went off. Once, twice. Kael felt something punch into his shoulder, heard Elara scream, saw Torres fire 3 quick shots that dropped Marco to the floor. Then the world tilted sideways, and Kael found himself on the ground without remembering how he got there. There was shouting, running footsteps, hands on him pressing against his wounds, Elara's face above his, her mouth moving in words he couldn't understand and couldn't hear. His hands came up, signed weakly, "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, tears dripping onto his face. "Good," he signed. "That's good." Then the gray static came back, pulling him down into darkness. But this time, as he went under, he felt Alara's hand gripping his, refusing to let go. And somehow, even drowning, that felt like enough. Kael woke to silence. Not the oppressive kind that had followed him for 15 years, not the weighted absence that came from running from ghosts, just silence, clean and simple and real. He was in a different hospital room this time, smaller, quieter, the kind reserved for federal witnesses who'd been shot 3 times in 48 hours and somehow kept breathing anyway. Morning light slanted through half-closed blinds, painting stripes across white sheets, and the IV pole standing guard beside his bed. His shoulder burned, his side throbbed. His ribs felt like someone had taken a sledgehammer to them and forgotten to stop. But he was alive. That counted for something. Alara sat in the same chair she'd occupied in the previous room, curled up with a blanket draped over her shoulders, and exhaustion etched into every line of her face. She was awake, watching him with eyes that held too many emotions to parse. When she saw he was conscious, she didn't smile, didn't cry, just signed, "You died, again." On the table, "They brought you back." Kael tried to respond, but his hands wouldn't cooperate. Too heavy, too tired. Alara seemed to understand. She stood, moved to the bed, and took his right hand in both of hers. "Don't try to talk, just listen." Her signing was slower now, deliberate, like she'd been practicing what to say. "Marco's dead. Torres shot him. The network is collapsing. They've made 37 arrests in 3 days. It's over, Kael. All of it." "Dante?" He managed to sign with his free hand. "In custody. Cooperating fully. Torres said he keeps asking about you. Wants to know if you're going to make it. Tell her I don't care." "I already did." Something that might have been a smile tugged at Kael's mouth. It hurt. Everything hurt. But Alara was here, alive, unharmed. That made the pain bearable. "How long?" he signed. "Since Marco?" 3 days. You've been in and out of consciousness. The doctors say you're stable now." Lucky. Incredibly, impossibly lucky. Doesn't feel lucky. "You're alive." That's lucky enough. A knock on the door interrupted them. Agent Torres walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee and looking like she hadn't slept since Kael last saw her. She set 1 cup on Alara's chair, kept the other for herself, and pulled up a second chair to the bedside. "You're awake. Good. We need to talk about next steps." Alara translated aloud for Kael's benefit, even though he could read Torres's lips well enough by now. The agent waited until the translation finished, then continued. "The network is finished. We've got testimony from 43 different sources, including Marco before he died. He gave us everything in those last few hours, names, locations, bank accounts. Turns out he'd been keeping his own insurance files, just like Dante. Smart criminals, I'll give you that." "What happens now?" Alara asked. "Now we build cases, lots of cases. This is going to take years to prosecute fully. But the immediate threat is neutralized. The people who wanted you both dead are either in custody or running for cover." "So we're safe?" Alara's voice carried hope and disbelief in equal measure. Torres hesitated. "Safer. I won't lie and say there's no residual risk. Some of these people have long memories and deep pockets. But with Marco dead and the network scattered, you're no longer high-priority targets. We can work with that." Kael forced his hand to move. "Sign to Alara. Ask her about witness protection." Alara translated. Torres nodded. "That's still on the table, both of you, if you want it. New identities, relocation, the full package. Or," she paused, sipped her coffee. "There's another option." "What option?" Alara asked. "You stay. Here in Philadelphia. Under your own names. We provide security for the first 6 months, regular check-ins after that. You testify when we need you to, but otherwise you live your lives. Miss Quinn goes back to teaching. Mr. Varelli finds something less illegal to occupy his time." "That's possible?" Alara looked stunned. "It's not recommended. Witness protection is safer, but it's not mandatory. If you're willing to accept the risk, you can stay." Kael and Alara looked at each other. Another whole conversation in a glance. "What do you want?" Alara signed. "I asked you that already," Kael signed back. "You never answered." "Because I don't know." Her hands trembled. "I'm terrified of staying, but I'm terrified of leaving too. Of starting over somewhere where I don't know anyone, don't have my work, don't have any of the things that make me who I am. Your work means that much to you? Those kids mean that much to me. Sophia and Marcus and all the others. They need consistency. They need someone who doesn't disappear on them. I don't want to be another person who walks away. Kael understood that better than she probably realized. Then we stay, he signed. You'd do that? Give up the safety of witness protection for my students? I'd do that for you. The students are just a bonus. Alara's eyes filled. She squeezed his hand hard enough to hurt. You're sure? No. But like you said, being uncertain together beats being uncertain alone. She turned to Torres. We'll stay. Both of us. Here. Torres didn't look surprised. Okay, I'll set it up. But understand, this means you're visible. You're targets. If anyone from the network decides to come after you, we might not get there in time. I understand, Alara said. Torres looked at Kael. He managed to nod. She sighed. All right. Against my better judgment, we'll do it your way. But I need your full cooperation. That means testimony whenever we need it. That means complete honesty about anything you remember. And Mr. Varelli, that means you're done with criminal activity. Permanently. You so much as jaywalk, and I'll revoke this arrangement so fast your head will spin. Kael signed to Alar, who translated. He says he's done. He means it. We'll see, Torres said, but something in her expression had softened. For what it's worth, you did the right thing. Coming back, protecting her. Not many people in your position would have made that choice. Not many people are stupid enough, Alara translated Kael's response, then added her own amendment. His words, not mine. Torres almost smiled. Get some rest. Both of you. You've earned it. She left. Alara and Kael sat in silence for a long moment, processing what they'd just agreed to. The weight of it settled around them like a blanket, warm and suffocating in equal measure. Are we insane? Alara signed. Probably, Kael signed back. But I've been insane before. This feels better. How? Because last time I was insane alone. This time I've got company. That earned him a real smile. Small, tentative, but genuine. I need to tell you something, Alara signed. While you were unconscious, I went back to my apartment with a police escort to get some things. And it's destroyed. Blood everywhere. Bullet holes in the walls. The landlord already sent me an eviction notice. Says I'm too much liability. I'm sorry. Don't be. I hated that place anyway. Too small. Terrible water pressure. That upright piano was out of tune. She paused. But I don't have anywhere to live now. And I don't have much money. Teaching doesn't exactly pay well. Kael's mind, even compromised by pain and medication, started working through solutions. Property he owned that wasn't connected to the criminal enterprise. Clean assets Torres couldn't touch. A place where Alara could be safe, and he could... Stop, Alara signed, watching his face. I can see you plotting. Don't. I'm not asking you to fix this. I'm just telling you because you should know. I'll figure it out. What if I want to help? Then help by getting better. Help by testifying. Help by being honest about everything you know so Torres can finish burying these people. That's how you help. And after, when I'm recovered and the testimony is done and we're just living, I don't know. We'll figure it out then. Fair enough. Kael closed his eyes, feeling exhaustion pull at him despite having been unconscious for 3 days. His body was a disaster zone. His life was a bigger one. But Alara was here. That counted for something. Maybe everything. Can I ask you something? He signed without opening his eyes. Yes. Why did you stay? After everything. After the guns and the blood and finding out who I really am. Why didn't you run? Alara was quiet for so long Kael thought maybe she wouldn't answer. Then her hands touched his, and he opened his eyes to see her signing with careful precision. Because I've spent my whole life being underestimated, being told I'm fragile or broken or less than. And you, with all your violence and terrible choices and criminal empire, you never once treated me that way. You learned my language. You listened when I talked. You let me make my own choices, even when you hated them. She paused. And because when you sign, I can see who you used to be. Before all this. Before the fear and control. I can see your sister in your hands. I can see the boy who learned a whole language just so someone wouldn't be alone. And I think that person is still in there. Worth saving. Kael's throat tightened. What if you're wrong? Then I'll be wrong, but I'd rather be wrong trying to save you than right walking away. There was nothing to say to that, nothing that wouldn't sound inadequate. So Kael just held her hand and let himself believe for maybe the first time in 15 years that being saved was possible. The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of hospital rooms and debriefings and physical therapy that made being shot seem pleasant by comparison. Kael's shoulder required 2 additional surgeries. His ribs healed slowly, protesting every breath. The psychological aftermath was worse. Nightmares about Marco's gun pointed at Alara's head, about arriving 30 seconds too late, about blood on white sheets and silence that meant death instead of peace. But Alara was there through it all, reading to him when he couldn't sleep, signing stories about her students when he needed distraction, sitting in comfortable silence when words, spoken or signed, felt like too much. She'd found a temporary apartment through a friend of a friend, tiny and overpriced but safe. Kael had wanted to help financially, but she'd shut that down hard, said she needed to do this herself, needed to prove she could stand on her own before she could stand with anyone else. He respected that, didn't like it, but respected it. Torres visited every few days with updates. The prosecutions were moving forward. Dante had pleaded guilty to racketeering and agreed to testify against the network's upper echelon in exchange for a reduced sentence. He'd sent word through Torres that he wanted to see Kael, to apologize in person. Kael had refused. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ash. 7 weeks after Marco died on that hospital floor, Kael was finally cleared to leave medical supervision. Torres drove him to a safe house in the suburbs, a nondescript 2-bedroom with beige carpet and furniture that looked like it came from a clearance sale in 1994. But it was clean, it was secure, and it was temporary. You'll stay here until the first round of trials concludes, Torres explained, handing him keys and a folder full of security protocols. After that, we reassess. If things stay quiet, you transition to permanent housing. If not, back to witness protection, Kael finished. Exactly. Questions? When can I see Alara? She's been cleared for supervised visits starting tomorrow. 2 hours, twice a week, federal agent present. After a month, if there are no security incidents, we can relax those restrictions. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than nothing. Thank you, Kael said. Meant it. Torres studied him with those sharp eyes. You've changed since I first called you. You're quieter. Getting shot 3 times will do that. It's more than that. You carry yourself differently, like you're not trying to intimidate everyone in a 50-foot radius anymore. Maybe I'm just tired. Maybe. Or maybe you finally figured out that fear only works until someone stops being afraid. She headed for the door, paused with her hand on the knob. For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. Coming back. Fighting for her. Most people in your position would have run and never looked back. I tried that, didn't get very far. Good. The world has enough runners, not enough people willing to stand and face what they've done. She left. Kael stood in the middle of the beige living room and tried to imagine a future here. Tried to picture himself as something other than what he'd been for 15 years. The image wouldn't quite come into focus, but for the first time, he could see its outline. That night, he couldn't sleep. Lay on the unfamiliar bed, staring at unfamiliar ceiling and feeling the weight of everything that had happened pressed down on his chest. Marco was dead. Dante was in prison. The organization Kael had built was dismantled. Everyone he'd known for the last decade and a half was either in custody, in hiding, or had turned state's evidence. He was completely alone. Except he wasn't. Because tomorrow, Alara would walk through that door. And maybe that was enough to build on. She arrived at exactly 9 the next morning, escorted by a young agent who looked barely old enough to shave. The agent did a security sweep of the house, established a perimeter, and then positioned himself by the front window with the kind of vigilance that suggested Torres had threatened him with desk duty if anything went wrong. Alara stood in the doorway wearing jeans and a sweater that made her look younger than her years. Hair pulled back, no makeup, just herself. Beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with aesthetics and everything to do with the fact that she was here, alive, choosing this. Hi, she signed. Hi, Kael signed back. They stared at each other across the beige living room. 7 weeks since they'd been alone together. 7 weeks of hospitals and debriefings and supervised visits that felt more like interrogations. Now they had 2 hours and no idea how to start. Your place is terrible, Ilara signed finally. I know, the carpet offends me. Everything's beige. Even the paintings on the wall are beige. Federal witness protection has a limited color palette. That broke the tension. Ilara laughed, silent to her own ears, but loud in the way her whole face transformed. She moved into the living room, sat on the couch that had probably been beige in 1994 and had faded to something even more depressing, and patted the cushion beside her. Cale sat, careful of his still healing shoulder, careful of the distance between them. How are you? Ilara signed. Alive. You? Same. Mostly. She tucked her feet under her. I went back to work last week. The school board wanted to fire me. Said I was too controversial, but the parents organized. Petitions, protests, the whole thing. Turns out they really like me. Of course they do. You're a good teacher. Sophia led the campaign. She made signs, stood outside the administration building for 3 days straight until they agreed to a hearing. She's 9 years old and already more politically effective than most adults. I told you she'd run the world someday. She asked about you, wanted to know when you were coming back to visit. What did you tell her? That you were dealing with some complicated things, that you'd come back when you could. Ilara's hands paused. Will you? Come back? Do you want me to? I'm asking you first. Kael took a breath that still hurt, even after 7 weeks. I don't know if I should be around kids, around anyone, really. I've spent 15 years being someone dangerous, someone who solves problems with violence. I don't know how to be anything else. You were good with them, with Sophia and Marcus and all the others. You weren't dangerous. You were patient, kind, present. That was before they knew who I really was. They still don't know, and they don't need to. You can be whoever you choose to be with them. That's the whole point of starting over. Is it really starting over if I'm still me? Ilara shifted closer, not touching him, but close enough that he could feel her warmth. You're not the same person you were 2 months ago. That person would have kept running, would have chosen his own safety over mine, would have let the fear win. Her hands moved with absolute certainty. You came back, you fought, you almost died twice to protect me. That's not the same person, or it's the same person making different mistakes. Maybe. But they're your mistakes to make, not someone else's, not Dante's or Marco's or anyone in that network. Yours. That matters. Cale wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that change was possible, that he could be something other than the sum of his worst choices. But belief required faith, and faith had been beaten out of him years ago. I don't know how to do this, he signed honestly. How to be normal. How to have a life that doesn't involve looking over my shoulder every 30 seconds. How to care about someone without calculating all the ways it could be used against me. Then we'll figure it out together, badly, messily, but together. Why? The question came out sharper than he intended. Why are you willing to do this? You could walk away right now, find someone safe, someone who doesn't come with federal agents and assassination attempts and a body count. Ilara's expression hardened. Because I'm tired of safe. I've been safe my whole life, safe and alone and constantly underestimated. You're the first person in years who's looked at me and seen someone worth the risk. And yeah, you're dangerous and damaged and probably going to give me a heart attack with your terrible decision-making. But you're also honest and brave and willing to die for what you care about. She grabbed his hand. I'd rather have that, all of it, including the scary parts, than spend the rest of my life being safe and alone. Cale stared at their joined hands, hers small and strong and steady, his scarred and shaking slightly from muscle damage that might never fully heal. I can't promise this works out, he signed with his free hand. I know, I can't promise I won't screw this up. I know that too. I can't even promise I know how to be what you deserve. Stop, Ilara signed. Stop trying to talk me out of this. I've made my choice. Respect it. So he did. Pulled her closer, carefully, mindful of his injuries, and let himself hold her for the first time since that hospital bed. She fit against him like she'd been designed for it, her head on his shoulder, his chin resting on her hair, both of them breathing in sync. The federal agent by the window studiously examined the ceiling. They sat like that for the full 2 hours, talking sometimes, hands moving in the space between them, building sentences and sharing stories. Silent other times, just existing in the same space, learning each other's rhythms. When the time was up and the agent cleared his throat apologetically, Alara pulled back just far enough to sign, "Same time Thursday?" "I'll be here," Kyle signed. "Good. Don't die before then. I'll try my best." She left. The house felt emptier without her. Kale stood at the window and watched the car disappear down the suburban street, feeling something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not quite hope, not quite peace, but something adjacent to both. The weeks that followed developed a rhythm. Alara visited twice a week. They talked, sat in silence, slowly built something that felt almost like normal. Kyle started physical therapy for his shoulder, started meeting with a bureau psychologist who specialized in witness trauma, started very tentatively thinking about what came after all this. 3 months in, Torres called with news. The first major trial had concluded. Guilty verdicts on all counts. The network's financial infrastructure was frozen. More indictments were coming. "You're in the clear," Torres said. "No credible threats against you or Ms. Quinn. We're lifting the security restrictions. You can move to permanent housing, see each other without supervision, start rebuilding your lives." "Just like that?" Kyle asked. "Just like that. Though I'll still want you available for testimony as needed. And Mr. Varelli, stay clean. You've got a second chance here. Don't waste it." He promised he wouldn't. The next day, Alara showed up at the safe house without an escort for the first time. Walked right in like she owned the place and signed, "We're going somewhere." "Where? You'll see. Get your coat." She drove them to Riverside Elementary. It was late afternoon, school just letting out, kids streaming through the doors in clusters of noise and color. Alara parked in the lot and turned to Kyle. "Ready?" "For what? To see if you still want to do this." She got out. Kyle followed, heart hammering in a way that had nothing to do with physical trauma and everything to do with fear of a different kind. They walked to the entrance, through the doors, down the familiar hallway with its bulletin boards and student artwork, to room 7B. Sophia saw him first. Her eyes went wide. Then she was running across the classroom, signing frantically, "You came back! You actually came back!" "I told you I would," Kale signed. "Adults say that all the time. They usually don't mean it. I meant it." The other kids gathered around. Marcus and 3 new students Kyle didn't recognize. Alara introduced them, her hands moving with the comfortable authority of someone in her element. "This is Kyle," she signed. "He's going to be helping out in the classroom, teaching you some new things." "What kind of things?" Marcus asked. Kale looked at Alara. She nodded encouragement. "Whatever you want to learn," Kyle signed to the kids. "I don't know much about teaching, but I know about problem solving, about making hard choices, about what it means to be strong when the world tells you you're not." "That sounds cool," Sophia signed. "Can you teach us how to punch someone?" "Sophia," Alara signed with exasperation. "What? It's a valid life skill." Kale almost laughed. Did laugh. A short surprise sound that made several kids grin. "Maybe we'll start with something else, like critical thinking, or basic self-defense, or how to read people." "That's still cool," Sophia decided. "When do you start?" "Monday?" Kyle looked at Alara for confirmation. She nodded. "Monday, 3 to 4:30, every week." The kids cheered. Alara shooed them toward their backpacks and parents who were starting to filter in. Kyle retreated to the back of the classroom, watching the organized chaos unfold. When the last student had left, Alara came over and signed, "You're sure about this?" "No, but I want to try anyway. What changed your mind?" "You. And Sophia. And the fact that I've spent 15 years building things meant to hurt people. I'd like to spend the next 15 building something that helps." Alara's eyes were suspiciously bright. "That's the sappiest thing you've ever said." "I know. Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation to maintain." "What reputation?" "You're a federal witness living in suburban obscurity." Exactly. "I'm mysterious and unknown, very dangerous. You're impossible. You like me anyway." "Unfortunately." They stood there grinning at each other like idiots. Then Alara signed something that made Kyle's breath catch. "I found a place. An apartment. Big enough for two people if they don't mind being close. Good water pressure, space for a real piano. Are you asking me to move in with you? I'm presenting an option for your consideration. That's very formal. I'm a professional educator. We do everything formally. Kale stepped closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in her eyes, close enough to count her heartbeat by the pulse in her throat. Yes. Yes, what? Yes to the apartment. Yes to being close. Yes to all of it. You didn't even ask where it is. Don't care, as long as you're there. That's terribly romantic for someone who claims to be mysterious and dangerous. I contain multitudes. You said so yourself. Elara reached up, had to stand on her toes even though Kael was leaning down, and kissed him. Soft and certain, and tasting like the coffee she'd been drinking all afternoon. Kael wrapped his arms around her, mindful of his still healing shoulder, and kissed her back like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Elara signed, "The apartment's available next month, if you're still sure. I'm sure. Even knowing I'm a terrible morning person and I steal blankets and I play piano at random hours when I can't sleep, especially knowing that. You're going to regret this. Probably. But like you said, better to regret it together than apart." They left the school as the sun was setting, painting the Philadelphia sky in shades of orange and purple. Walked to Elara's car hand in hand. Drove through the city Kael had once ruled and now barely recognized, seeing it with new eyes. The apartment Elara had found was in Northern Liberties, 3 blocks from her old place, but worlds away in terms of safety and light. Hardwood floors. Big windows. A landlord who'd done a background check and decided that federal witness status was acceptable as long as the rent checks cleared. They moved in 5 weeks later. Kael's possessions fit in 2 duffel bags. Everything else from his old life had been seized or destroyed. Elara brought her books and plants and the upright piano she'd had in storage since college, now professionally tuned and gleaming in the afternoon light. That first night, they sat on the floor surrounded by boxes and ate takeout Chinese food straight from the containers. Neither of them had furniture yet. Didn't matter. They had time to figure that out. "Can I ask you something?" Elara signed, chopsticks balanced precariously in one hand. "Always. Do you miss it? Your old life, the power, the control." Kael set down his food and thought about it. Really thought about it. Sometimes, when things feel chaotic or uncertain, I miss knowing exactly how to respond, exactly who to call, exactly what leverage to apply. I miss the simplicity of solving problems with force. But I don't miss the fear. Don't miss looking over my shoulder every second. Don't miss being someone people are terrified of instead of someone they actually know. He paused. And I don't miss being alone. You were alone for a long time, 15 years. Give or take. After my sister died, I didn't see the point in letting anyone get close. It seemed easier to stay isolated, safer. Was it? No, just lonelier. Elara set down her own food and moved closer. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're not alone anymore. Me too. They finished eating in comfortable silence, unpacked a few boxes, argued good-naturedly about where things should go, eventually collapsed onto the air mattress that was serving as their bed until the real one arrived, exhausted and happy in a way Kael had forgotten was possible. That night, lying in the dark with Elara curled against his side, Kael allowed himself to imagine a future. A real one. Not the vague outline he'd been working with, but something concrete. Mornings making coffee and arguing about whose turn it was to do dishes. Afternoons at the school, teaching kids who reminded him of his sister. Evenings here, in this apartment, building a life that belonged to them instead of being dictated by fear or violence or other people's expectations. It wouldn't be perfect. He'd still have nightmares about Marco's gun, still flinch at unexpected noises, still carry the weight of 15 years' worth of choices that couldn't be undone. But Elara would be there, and somehow that made the weight bearable. 6 months after moving in together, Kael testified at the final major trial. Spent 3 days on the stand answering questions about the network's operations, Marco's role, his own complicity. The defense attorney tried to paint him as an unreliable witness, a criminal trying to save his own skin by throwing others under the bus. Kael let him. Didn't get defensive, didn't lose his temper, just answered every question with brutal honesty and let the jury decide. They decided guilty. On all counts. For all defendants. Torres called that evening. It's done. They're going away for a combined 240 years. The network is finished. What about the people at the top, the ones Marco and Dante mentioned? Still working on it, but we've got enough to keep you and Ms. Quinn safe indefinitely. You can stop looking over your shoulder. Easier said than done, but Kael was trying. A year after that first dinner at Marcello's, Kael stood in front of room 7B watching 8 kids, Sophia now 10 and even more fierce, Marcus reading at a high school level, 6 others with their own stories and struggles, and realized something fundamental had shifted. He wasn't performing goodness or trying to earn redemption. He was just being present, showing up, helping where he could, making sure these kids knew they weren't alone, the same way his sister had never been alone because he'd learned her language. After class, Sophia approached him with an expression that meant she was about to ask something complicated. "Can I ask you a question?" she signed. "Of course. Miss Quinn says you used to do dangerous things before you came here. Is that true?" Kael glanced at Alara, who was organizing papers at her desk and deliberately not watching this conversation. He looked back at Sophia. "Yes, it's true. What kind of dangerous things? The kind that hurt people, the kind I'm not proud of. But you stopped." "I did." "Why?" Kael knelt down to her level. "Because I met someone who showed me I could be something else. Someone who believed I was worth saving even when I didn't believe it myself." Sophia processed this with her characteristic intensity. "Miss Quinn, yes, she's pretty great. Yes, she is. Are you going to marry her?" The question caught Kael completely off guard. He straightened, felt his face heat. We haven't." Sophia grinned. "You should. She loves you, and you obviously love her. I can tell by the way you sign when you talk about her. Your hands go all soft. My hands do not go soft. They totally do. It's cute in a grown-up way." "Thank you for that assessment." "You're welcome. So when's the wedding?" "Sophia, I want to be invited. I've never been to a wedding. There is no wedding. Yet." She skipped away before Kael could formulate a response. Alara came over, eyebrows raised. "What was that about?" "Nothing." Sophia being Sophia, she's gotten in your head, hasn't she? She's terrifying. That's not an answer. Kael signed carefully. "She asked if I was going to marry you." Alara's eyes widened. "What did you tell her? That there was no wedding? And she said, yet, and ran away before I could respond." Alara laughed. "She's not wrong. About which part? Any of it." Kael's heart did something complicated in his chest. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying I'm not opposed to the concept. Eventually. When we're ready. If you're interested. Are you proposing to me? I'm presenting an option for consideration. Professional educator, remember? We do everything formally." Kael pulled her close. They were alone in the classroom now, the door closed, the hallways empty. "Yes." "Yes what?" "Yes to eventually. Yes to when we're ready. Yes to being interested." "That's very nonspecific. I'm being mysterious and dangerous. You're being impossible again. You love me anyway." "Unfortunately." He kissed her. Long and slow and certain. When they broke apart, Alara was smiling in a way that made Kael's chest ache. "We should probably get a ring first," she signed. "Before Sophia starts planning the whole wedding. She would too." "Absolutely. She'd have color schemes and seating charts within a week." Terrifying child. Our terrifying child. Collectively. As a community. I can live with that. They left the school hand in hand, walking into the Philadelphia evening with no particular destination in mind. The city moved around them, cars and pedestrians, and the endless pulse of life carrying on. Somewhere in this city, trials were still happening. People were still being sentenced. The remnants of Kael's old world were still being systematically dismantled. But here, walking down a random street with Alara's hand warm in his, Kael felt something he hadn't felt in 15 years. Home. Not a place, not a building, just the certainty that wherever she was, that's where he belonged. 2 years after that first dinner, on a cold December night very much like the one where this had all started, Kael and Alara stood on a rooftop overlooking the city. Not the safe house roof or the apartment roof, but the roof of Riverside Elementary, accessed through a maintenance door that Alara had a key to and probably wasn't supposed to use for personal purposes. Below them, Philadelphia glittered with Christmas lights and possibilities. Above them, stars struggled through the light pollution, barely visible, but there nonetheless. Kyle's hands were cold despite his gloves. He pulled them off and signed, "I need to tell you something." "Okay," Alara signed back, her breath fogging in the winter air. "The first night we met, I thought you were the joke. Someone's idea of entertainment. I walked into that restaurant expecting to perform superiority for an hour and then never think about it again. I know, I thought the same about you, but then you signed your name and I signed mine, and something shifted, something I didn't have words for and still barely understand. Where is this going? Somewhere sappy. Bear with me." Kale pulled a small box from his jacket pocket, opened it. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, nothing ostentatious. "I've spent 15 years running from every hard truth, from grief, from connection, from anything that made me feel human. But you made running impossible. You made me want to stand still, to be present, to be known." Alara's eyes were wide. "I don't know how to do this perfectly," Kyle continued. "I don't know how to be the person you deserve, but I know I want to spend the rest of my life trying. I know I want to wake up next to you every morning. I know I want to watch you teach those kids and turn into Sophia's surrogate parent and play piano at 3 a.m. when you can't sleep. I know I want all of it, all of you, forever." He got down on one knee. The roof was cold and slightly damp, and this was probably violating about 17 school policies. "Alara Quinn, will you marry me?" She was crying, tears streaming down her face, hands shaking as she signed, "You're doing this on a roof, in December, at my workplace. Is that a no? It's a, you're impossible, but yes. Yes to all of it, to all of you. Forever." Kale slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that trembled despite his best efforts at control. Stood, pulled her close and kissed her like the world was ending and beginning in the same moment. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Alara signed, "Sophia's going to lose her mind. She's going to plan the entire wedding in a week. We're going to have to let her, aren't we?" "Absolutely." They stood there on the roof, holding each other as snow began to fall, light, tentative, the first of the season. Philadelphia stretched out below them, indifferent to their joy or their history or the improbable journey that had brought them here. Kale thought about his sister, about the boy he'd been who'd learned sign language so someone wouldn't be alone, about the man he'd become who'd almost lost himself to fear and violence and other people's expectations, about the person he was now, scarred and uncertain but somehow, impossibly, loved. "Thank you," he signed into Alara's hair. She pulled back. "For what?" "For not running. For seeing something in me worth saving. For being brave enough to believe I could change. You did that yourself. I just believed what was already there. Still. Thank you." "You're welcome. Now can we go inside? I'm freezing. One more minute. Why? Because I want to remember this, exactly this. The snow and the city and you. I want to remember what it feels like to not be running anymore." Alara smiled. "Okay, one more minute." They stood in the falling snow, hands intertwined, watching their city breathe below them. Somewhere in that sprawl of lights and life, children slept peacefully. Somewhere, people were making terrible choices and great ones. Somewhere, lives were ending and beginning and continuing forward despite everything. And here, on this roof, two people who'd found each other in the chaos stood together and chose hope over fear, chose presence over running, chose love over survival. The snow fell harder, the city glittered, and Kyle Virelli, once feared, once lost, now found, finally allowed himself to believe that redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building a future worth the fight. He took Alara's hand, and together they went inside. Into warmth, into light, into the rest of their lives. And for the first time in 15 years, Kyle wasn't afraid of what came next, because whatever it was, they'd face it together. In silence, in sign. In the language of two people who'd learned that sometimes the quietest conversations are the ones that matter most. The door closed behind them. The snow continued to fall. And somewhere in Philadelphia, a new story was just beginning.